Gu Chinzhou, who had been divorced for 10 years, suddenly returned to the country. With red-rimmed eyes, he begged for reconciliation, swearing to spend the rest of his life making up for the guilt of abandoning me and our child. He promised to take us abroad, give me the best life possible, and get our child into a top-tier school. My younger sister, Shin Eun-hye, was so moved she hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "Sis," she said, "your days of hardship are finally over." My mother was also in tears. "I always knew Chinzhou was a good man," she wept. "He must have had his reasons back then. He would never truly abandon his wife and child." Their persuasion finally wore me down, but it wasn't until I arrived abroad that the horrifying truth dawned on me. I had been deceived. With our passports confiscated, my child and I were left homeless, destitute, and exposed to the elements. I pleaded for help by calling Gu Chinzhou countless times, only to be met with cold, relentless rejection. To survive, I had no choice but to work under the table. When I finally returned home, clutching my son's cold ashes, the glare from the LED screen in the central square was blinding. The massive screen was on a loop, displaying a festive banner that read, "First birthday celebration for the Gu family heiress." On the screen, Gu Chinzhou and Shin Eun-hye held their child, the picture of a warm, happy family. I was driven by a mad impulse to demand an explanation, only to be swept under the wheels of a speeding freight truck. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the very day Gu Chinzhou begged for a second chance. As the sun set, I pushed my Malatang cart back to the shantytown as usual, spotting from a distance a crowd of curious neighbors gathered outside my door. A Maybach was parked sideways across the narrow alley entrance, creating an absurd contrast with the rusted bicycles surrounding it. My heart sank. The familiar scene made my blood run cold. I had been reborn, returned to the very day Gu Chinzhou came to beg me to take him back. The license plate is all sequential numbers. Erupted a chorus of astonished exclamations from the crowd. A gaggle of aunties jostled at the front, their floral aprons brushing against the car. "Since when did we have a moneybags like this hiding in our neighborhood? That Shin Choo-choo is something else, slumming it every day, selling Malatang looking all disheveled. Turns out she was just slumming it for fun." I gripped the handle of my food cart tightly. The relentless tide of gossip washed over me, and my heart sank like a stone. Just then, my son suddenly darted out from the crowd. Mom, Dad says I don't have to take the Gaokao. He can send me abroad to study directly." My son's face was flushed with excitement as he pulled me by the hand, dragging me toward the house. The warmth of his palm reminded me of my past life, holding his feverish, convulsing body on a foreign street, utterly desperate. Inside, Gu Chinzhou stood up and came over, pulling me into an embrace. A light of remorse flickered in his eyes. "Choo-choo, I'm back. I want to make up for the 10 years I've let you and our child down. Come abroad with me and live a life of ease. I'll give you the best life possible. Our son can get into the world's top universities. You won't have to fight that brutal, single-file battle with millions of others back home anymore." In my past life, I was taken in by that earnest plea of his. All it bought me was a living nightmare in a foreign land. The very next day after we arrived, he took our passports and all our money, claiming he needed them to process documents. Then, he pulled his old vanishing act and disappeared. On a heavy snow night, my son and I were evicted by our landlord, huddled under the eaves of a convenience store, while he was toasting to his new life with Shin Eun-hye in a mansion across the ocean. 10 years ago, our family went bankrupt, and my father passed away from illness. Yet, Gu Chinzhou left without a word, abandoning me and our young son, stating plainly that he couldn't be dragged down by family and would return only after he had made something of himself. I chose to set him free and shouldered the burden of the family alone. My father left behind massive debts and alienated the entire industry before he passed. No company was willing to offer a handout, a simple job to survive. To me, the once pampered heiress, I refused to be crushed by life, and chose to stand on my own 2 feet. For 10 long years, I pushed my spicy hot pot cart through wind and rain. The burned scars on my palms from those days have never faded. Now, fine lines gather at the corners of my eyes, my hands are rough, and the radiant spirit I once had is long gone. I looked straight into his adoring eyes and suddenly asked, "Do you still love me?" Looking like this, a flicker of hesitation, almost imperceptible, passed through his eyes before they hardened with resolve. "Choo-choo, you will always be my one and only." My younger sister, Shin Eun-hye, stood to the side, clinging to our mother's arm and weeping as if her heart would break. My sister has finally made it through the hard times, but just a moment ago, when Gu Chinzhou was answering me, I distinctly caught a glint of malice flashing in her eyes. She then hugged me tightly, her voice choked with sobs. "Sis, you'll never have to run that street stall to support the family again." Shin Eun-hye's tears at That moment were nothing but crocodile tears too. If I hadn't lived through a lifetime already, I would never have believed that the girl I cherished like a sister could harbor such a viper's heart. When I was a child, my father brought home a frail little girl from the orphanage. He named her Yunhai and told me to treat her as my own sister. Even after our family fell on hard times, I worked from dawn till dusk, pushing a spicy hot pot cart, just to put her through university. I even swallowed my pride and begged every one of my late father's former subordinates and acquaintances, all to secure her an internship at a company. After she started working, I never asked her to share the family's burdens. Instead, I secretly gave her a monthly allowance, worried that as a newcomer to society, she might struggle with social expenses. Yet this wholehearted devotion was repaid with nothing but heart-wrenching agony. In my past life, stranded in a foreign land, every desperate call I made to Gu Chinzhou went unanswered, and every single sleepless night, I would receive intimate photos of her and Gu Chinzhou, all sent from the same number. Those images were like poison-tipped daggers, piercing me through every restless night. Watching her weep so pitifully before me, a chill ran down my spine. Faced with Gu Chinzhou's insincere overtures, I rejected him without hesitation. What's done cannot be undone, Mr. Gu, please leave. A flicker of astonishment passed through his eyes. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so resolute. Choo-choo, don't gamble with our child's future out of spite. The tenderness in Gu Chinzhou's eyes instantly turned to ferocity. Sister, your husband can give Xiaojun the best education possible. Please don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. Shannon Hui chimed in. My mother, sitting in her wheelchair, took my hand in her trembling one, her voice full of heartache. My child, you've looked after me for 10 years. I can't bear to see you suffer like this. For the rest of your life, you should go and do what you want to do. I won't hold you back. After my father passed away, my mother fell gravely ill and never recovered. I took care of her for a full decade. I understood what she meant. She just couldn't stand to see me so worn out. As long as our family can stay together, I can find sweetness even in the hardest of days. Mom, I want to study abroad. My son, Xiaojun, tugged carefully at the hem of my clothes, his eyes brimming with tears. Seizing the opportunity, Gu Chinzhou pressed his advantage. Shin-chu-chu, the college entrance exam is right around the corner. Can you bear the responsibility of ruining his future? You need to respect the child's wishes. I paid no heed to his words. I simply crouched down and gently wiped the tears from my son's face. Xiaojun, our family may not be wealthy, but being together is what truly matters. Remember, your surname is Shen. You have no connection to him. He abandoned us without a second thought back then. He can't just waltz back into our lives now. How could I possibly make the same foolish, misguided mistake twice? How could I ever stand by and watch my own child go abroad only to meet their death? Gu Chinzhou still had the nerve to try and lecture me. Acting as if he were in the right, I grabbed the broom by the door and, without another word, began shooing him out. Shin Eunhai shrieked in protest. Sis, stop. Your husband went through so much to find you, I sneered. If you're so concerned about him, why don't you just leave with him? Her eyes darted about in panic. Sis, what on earth are you saying? I shoved her out the door along with the rest. I drove them both out with a broom, using brute force they couldn't hope to resist. 10 years of backbreaking work selling spicy hot pot gave me plenty of strength. Right now, even if I looked like a shrew, I wouldn't let those two set foot in my house again. Outside, the murmurs and gossip from the onlookers rose and fell in waves. Inside the house, the mother kept sighing, and the son was silently weeping. I held my son tightly, my voice firm. Let's keep our feet on the ground. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. If you work hard, you can shine anywhere. The son in my arms was silent for a long time before speaking in a muffled voice. Dad says schools abroad are better. If I agree to go, you won't have to run the street stall anymore. His voice trailed off, and he suddenly clenched the hem of his shirt, adding, but I know he hurt you before. It's just that you want a complete family, right? I gently smoothed the frown on his brow. My son deflated like a punctured balloon, hanging his head in silence, his fingers still clutching desperately at the hem of his school uniform. 3. I thought that with Gu Chinzhou's departure, all the turmoil had finally subsided. The next morning, as usual, I wheeled out my Malatang cart to set up my stall, but my son, walking beside me, remained utterly silent. I know he holds a grudge against me in his heart, but this bitterness, I have to swallow it down alone. My child, one day you will understand your mother's dilemma. As night fell, the bustling crowd at the school gate gradually dispersed, but my son's figure was nowhere to be seen. He would always come running over early at this time to help me set up the stall. That was, until a few of his classmates gathered around the stall, all chattering at once, asking me curiously, Auntie, did Xiaojun drop out of School, auntie, is Xiao Jun's dad super rich? We heard he's taking him abroad to study. I'm so jealous. It must be amazing not having to take the Gaokao. The children's envious chatter hit me like a bolt from the blue, shattering me completely. My vision went dark. Without a second thought for my stall, I stumbled and staggered towards the school building. I pushed open the office door. Seeing my disheveled state, the homeroom teacher, Mr. Lin, stood up in surprise. Xiao Jun's mother, what brings you here? Miss Lin, what on earth happened today? I clutched her wrist tightly, tears welling up uncontrollably in my eyes. Miss Lin sighed, her expression full of regret. Mr. Gu came in this morning to withdraw his son from school. I tried to talk him out of it. Xiao Jun's grades are consistently top of his year. He's prime material for Tsinghua or Peking University. Rushing off abroad like this, he might not adapt well. What did he say? My voice trembled. He said, Miss Lin frowned deeply. Xiao Jun doesn't need to fight for a spot on the grueling college entrance exam like other kids. He was born to have the best resources. He doesn't have to walk the same path as ordinary people. Though regretful, Teacher Lin also agreed with Gu Qinzhou's point of view. She paused, looking at me. As teachers, we truly hope the child has broader options. He cannot drop out, I exclaimed, my hands trembling as I pulled out the household register. You see, I am Xiao Jun's only legal guardian. He has no right to make decisions for the child. Teacher Lin looked troubled and gently pushed the household register back. Xiao Jun's mother, it's best not to involve the child in conflicts between adults. We must prioritize the child's future. Besides, Mr. Gu went to see the head teacher this morning to complete the procedures for the child. It's all signed and stamped now. As his mother, you should be happy that he has a bright future ahead of him. Teacher Lin's words instantly plunged me into despair. My legs gave way, and I collapsed onto the cold floor, weeping uncontrollably. The words poured out. Teacher Lin, you don't understand. He abandoned his wife and child 10 years ago. Now that his mistress can't bear him a son, he wants to snatch Xiao Jun back just to have someone to take care of him in his old age. I've raised this child all by myself through hardship and toil. I can't lose him. I didn't care if my words made sense anymore. I just cried harder and harder. The regret from my past life gnawed at my heart like a venomous snake. In that past life, at this very moment, I had foolishly followed Gu Qinzhou to complete the paperwork, single-handedly destroying my son's future. Teacher Lin's eyes instantly welled up with tears. She was a single mother too, having raised her daughter alone from a young age after her husband cheated and abandoned the family. As another woman left behind by her husband, she understood the hardship better than anyone. Smack. She slammed her hand down on the desk, hard enough to make the water in the cup splash out. This is outrageous. Those good-for-nothing men have no conscience. They never lifted a finger to be a father, and now they think they can just swoop in and claim the rewards. Mrs. Xiao Jun, don't you worry. I'll go to the Academic Affairs office first thing tomorrow to withdraw that withdrawal application. She understood perfectly well the immense effort and boundless love it took for a single mother to raise a child into the outstanding, well-rounded young man he was today. She hurried over to me, grasped my hand firmly, and said with conviction, Mrs. Xiao Jun, please rest assured, I'll speak with the principal tomorrow. Not only will Xiao Jun take the college entrance exam, but he'll do so as a graduating senior and aim for the top score. As the streetlights at the school gate flickered on, Teacher Lin walked me to the stairwell entrance. She gave my shoulder a gentle pat, her eyes full of encouragement. Don't worry, Xiao Jun said he'd be studying at the library until closing time. That boy is sensible. He knows what he's doing. With those few words from Teacher Lin, my anxious heart finally settled. However, when I got home, I was in for a shock, for the house was dark and completely empty. Since starting her job, Yunhai Shen had long since moved out. My mother, confined to a wheelchair for years, was utterly incapable of going out on her own. A sense of dread washed over me. My hand, clutching the keys, began to tremble uncontrollably as I turned and knocked on Auntie Peng's door next door. The door had barely cracked open when Auntie Peng's exclamation erupted. Oh my goodness, Choo-Choo, what are you still doing holed up here? The whole neighborhood thought you'd moved into a big mansion to live the life of luxury. Auntie Peng, is my mother here? I skipped the pleasantries, my gaze darting past her shoulder into the room. The wicker chair where my mother usually sat was empty. The astonishment on Auntie Peng's face was now unmistakable. Good heavens, you mean you, the person it concerns, still don't know? Your rich husband came to pick up the old lady in his fancy car today, and your sister, dressed like a fairy from a painting. My, and Hui is really growing more and more lovely. She suddenly caught sight of the spicy hot pot cart behind me, pursed her lips in disdain, and said, Tisk, TSK. About to become a lady of leisure and you're still slaving away at this greasy little business, you're so stubborn. Before the words had even left her mouth, Teacher Lin's phone rang abruptly. The moment I answered the call, a cold sweat trickled down my spine. Xiao Jun isn't at the school library. Gu Qinzhou's smug, hypocritical smirk flashed before my eyes. I clenched the phone, my nails digging into my palm. First, they cut off my child's path to the college entrance exam, and now they've taken my disabled mother. Are they trying to force my hand in my past life? I could never understand why Gu Qinzhou was so hellbent on destroying me. If it was just to carry on his affair with Shen and Hui, he could have easily kept me in the dark, especially since we'd been divorced for 10 years. Why go to all the trouble of tricking me into going abroad, only to then try to kill me? My gut tells me there's far more to their relationship than just an affair in my past life. I must have missed something. The secrets hidden beneath the surface of that affair are likely the real reason he wanted me dead. With that thought, I calmed down. I was certain that Xiao Jun must have been picked up by Gu Qinzhou. Not wanting to implicate anyone else, I lied to Teacher Lin, my throat tight. He said he wanted to study at home today. Teacher Lin, about tomorrow, I'm really counting on you. Don't worry, leave it to me, came Teacher Lin's cheerful assurance from the other end of the line. After hanging up the phone, Auntie Peng finally noticed my expression. Choo-choo, you look like you've seen a ghost. What's wrong? I reached out to steady Auntie Peng, clinging to her like a drowning person to a lifebuoy. Auntie, I need your help. She clasped my hand in return. Silly child, no need for formalities with me. Just tell me. We've been neighbors for 10 years. You think I'd stand by and watch you get bullied? The motion sensor light in the hallway flickered on and off, and I could hear my own ragged breathing. Gu Qinzhou thought he had cut off all my escape routes, but he forgot. In these bustling streets and alleys, I was never alone. 5. When Gu Qinzhou opened the door, his pupils contracted slightly. He clearly hadn't expected me to show up at his doorstep. A faint, mocking smile touched my lips. Thanks to your generosity in announcing your new address to everyone while moving, the whole street knows Chairman Gu bought a villa downtown. A cold laugh echoed in my heart. How could I not know the address of this villa? In my past life, it was right here that I accepted his second proposal and officially got back together with him. Inside, the lights were warm and inviting. He and Shinun Hai were busy setting up a backdrop, while Xiao Jun puffed out his cheeks blowing up balloons. My mother, in her wheelchair, was handing him tape. This so-called surprise, which I had fully anticipated, was an exact replica of the scene from my past life. It churned my stomach, making me want to vomit. Choo-choo. I was planning to finish setting up and then pick you up to give you a surprise, Gu Qinzhou said, scratching his head awkwardly. The pink balloon swayed in his fingers, casting a hypocritical glow. Sister, Shinun Hai pressed close, her face alight with excitement, her fingertips cold as snakes. Sister, look, this is the villa your husband bought. We'll never have to live in a shack again. She lowered her eyelids and fidgeted with her fingers. Sister, I'm sorry. I said the wrong thing yesterday and made you angry. Can you forgive me? With a pitiful, cautious look, she pleaded, I don't want to live in this shared house anymore. Please, sister, let me move back in. Okay. Her voice was sickly sweet, yet it reminded me of the time she'd said with disgust over the phone, do you want me to live in a slum and be laughed at by my colleagues? Back then, I sold spicy hot pot until the wee hours every day, yet I still scraped together every penny to rent an apartment for her. The way she's shaking my arm now is exactly the same as when she begged me to buy her a designer bag in a past life. Utterly brazen. She knows perfectly well that I'll always give in as long as she acts cute. What's a little spat between sisters? Gu Qinzhou said with a hearty laugh. Once you all go abroad, and Hui will stay here to keep mom company, we'll find her a good husband later. Brother-in-law, you're teasing me again. The girl's coquettish voice was particularly grating. The silent understanding in their exchanged glance felt like a fine needle pricking deep into the eye. So the elder brother as a father figure I saw back then was just a cover for their affair. The lights suddenly dimmed as Gu Qinzhou knelt on one knee, holding a bouquet of roses. The air was thick with the scent of roses, mingled with an aura of hypocrisy. Choo-choo, marry me, let's get remarried. I promise to give you and Xiao Jun the best life from now on. As the familiar proposal lines were spoken, a glimmer of anticipation lit up Xiao Jun's eyes, and his mother's face broke into a gratified smile. Those scenes, overlapping with memories of a past life, left a bitter taste in my throat. I fell silent for a moment, yet a smile still curved the corners of my lips. All right, I accept. A wild joy surged in Gu Qinzhou's eyes, while Shen and Hui was so excited she nearly stumbled. Their excitement was palpable. If there hadn't been others around, they probably would have kissed right then and there just as they thought their prey was in the bag. I interrupted their private celebration. But I have one condition. 6. Seeing the big fish was about to bite, Guchinjo agreed. Without a second thought, choo-choo, just name it, whatever the condition, I'd go through fire and water to make it happen for you. How disgusting, how slimy. I can't stand listening to him. Wait until Xiaojun finishes the college entrance exam and gets his results before you leave, choo-choo. I'm afraid I can't agree to that. I already helped Xiaojun withdraw from school today. Guchinjo's tone carried the arrogance of someone in a position of power. Xiaojun's head snapped up, his eyes flashing with helplessness. Dad, you never even asked me, that was my oversight, Guchinjo said, turning to clap a heavy, almost proprietary hand on his son's shoulder. Your school abroad has already been chosen, we'll leave tomorrow, right after your mother and I finalize the remarriage paperwork. You don't want your mother to struggle alone for your sake, do you? He said it all so matter-of-factly, as if his son were just another piece of luggage to be packed up and taken away. I saw a flicker of desolation cross my son's face, the wounded look of a child over these years of schooling. My son had forged deep bonds with his classmates. Here were the teachers he respected, the close friends he cherished, and the secret stirrings of a young heart. He needed time for a proper farewell. In my past life, I was utterly misguided, blindly following Guchinjo's decision and callously cutting short that precious goodbye abroad. Even as my son lay critically ill, he would murmur in delirium, filled with regret for never having the chance to say goodbye to his teachers and classmates, and for lacking the courage to confess the affection he had harbored for 3 years toward the girl he admired. The words left unspoken became his deepest regret, a final obsession on his deathbed. Xiaojun, do you want to leave the country right now? I asked my son. I watched my son hang his head, his fingertips white from gripping the balloon. I want to say goodbye to my classmates and teachers, and also, the boy's voice trailed off, heavy with unspoken feelings. Son, if you don't want to, I'll handle the withdrawal process. I steadied my son's trembling shoulders. He looked up abruptly, a glimmer of hope reigniting in his eyes. Shin-chu-chu, don't you dare mess with our son's future. Hearing my refusal to let him drop out, Guchinjo took an urgent half-step forward. Shin and Hui immediately chimed in, grabbing my wrist with feigned concern. Sis, why are you being so stubborn? Brother-in-law went through all the trouble to finalize the paperwork before Xiaojun turns 18. What a meaningful coming-of-age gift. I shook off her hand in disgust, wiping my palm on my skirt. Enough with the nonsense. Let me make this clear today. Xiaojun will take the college entrance exam. My son has studied his heart out for over a decade for this day. I won't let him live with that regret. My son cautiously shuffled closer to me. I shielded him behind me and glared at that despicable pair. What, if I refuse? Are you going to try and snatch my son away by force? Seeing how resolute I was, a flicker of impatience passed between Guchinjo and Shin Eunhai in their exchanged glance. The two exchanged a smile, their expressions, like foxes who just pulled off a successful raid, clearly waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Fine, have it your way. Guchinjo's smile was insincere. I'm leaving sooner or later anyway. Shin Eunhai chimed in immediately. Sis is right. Xiaojun should say a proper goodbye to his friends. Her smile was gentle, but it couldn't hide the urgency in her fingers as they twisted the hem of her skirt. I knew they thought everything was settled with the paperwork, foolproof, and were just waiting to see me make a fool of myself at school. Mother gently stroked Xiaojun's head. It's good to be able to spend a few more days with Grandma. The elderly woman in the wheelchair had more silver in her temples, unaware that the family before her had long been plotting her accidental demise. In my past life, I returned home in disgrace. When I went to confront Guchinjo and Shin Eunhai for an explanation, I instead came face to face with my mother's hearse. Security guards pinned me face down on the ground. Shin Eunhai's heel ground into the forged medical records on the floor. My mother had died of a sudden heart attack after they deliberately cut off her medication. Her voice was sickly sweet, laced with venom. She covered her mouth in a faint gasp as a dump truck barreled toward us, but her eyes glittered with excitement. Now that the old one and the young one are both dead, it's time for you to join them in the grave. With a sweeping gesture, Guchinjo shoved me into the road, and I was dragged under the tires. I let Guchinjo put his arm around my shoulder, watching as he slipped the diamond ring onto my finger. The diamond sparkled under the lights, reflecting the hypocritical smiles on the faces of Guchinjo and Shin Eunhai. Don't rush, I told myself silently. The one who's in too much of a hurry to close the net is the one most likely to slip up. In my past life, I was fooled by this illusion. In this life, I will make this perfect couple watch with their own eyes as the web they wove turns back to ensnare them. 7. Teacher Lin successfully withdrew Xiaojun's withdrawal application. Guchinjo never expected that I would actually have a way to get Xiaojun's withdrawal Application revoked. Fuming with rage, he stormed into the dean's office to demand an explanation. The dean could only look at him with an apologetic expression and say, Shin Xiaojun has consistently topped the rankings. Teacher Lin insists he must take the Gaokao to boost our school's Tsinghua and Peking University admission rates. She even gave the principal her personal guarantee that she'd deliver those results this year. Teacher Lin has produced top-scoring classes for 10 consecutive years. Now, our school's reputation is largely thanks to her. It's no use complaining to me. You could go to the principal himself and it wouldn't make a difference. Gu Qinzhou was left seething with pent-up frustration, with nowhere to vent it. Not only that, but at my request, Teacher Lin also arranged for Xiaojun to board at school under the pretext of intensive senior year training, effectively freeing him from Gu Qinzhou's surveillance. Left with no other choice, Gu Chen had to put on the act of a doting father, trying desperately to bridge the gap with his son. He showed up loaded down with bags of daily necessities for Xiaojun, putting on a show of his insincere affection. When he popped the trunk, the steaks, imported liquor, and cash were all on full display. Teacher Lin immediately intervened. A senior in high school needs to focus on their studies. Don't set a bad example. Afterwards, Teacher Lin rolled her eyes and vented to me, that man has no idea how to raise a child. If the kid stays with him, he'll be led astray sooner or later. Fortunately, with the child boarding at school and under the strict, watchful eyes of the school and Teacher Lin, Xiaojun's studies and well-being are secured, putting my mind completely at ease. Gu Qinzhou really went all out, not only moving my whole family into a villa but also hiring a living caregiver for my mother. Yet I insisted on running my stall every day, which he found utterly baffling. Darling, my money is your money, don't work yourself so hard, he'd say, his words dripping with feigned concern while his eyes betrayed a contemptuous disdain. For the first few days, he would occasionally drop by my stall to inspect it, even going so far as to buy out the whole place for a show, putting on the act of a devoted husband. But it wasn't long before he lost patience, and his visits became less and less frequent. Meanwhile, under the guise of setting up my stall, I was quietly advancing my own plan. Gradually, they let their guard down around me. Unaware that I had seen right through all their false pretenses, I insisted on setting up my stall every day, leaving early and returning late, all to divert their attention. Yet, they remained completely oblivious to the fact that our shared living space was now riddled with cameras I had secretly hidden. Though Gu Qinzhou and Shinan Hui lived under the same roof and deliberately kept their distance, they were always carrying on behind my back right under my nose. When I wasn't home, they were even more brazen under the guise of offering her a helping hand. Gu Qinzhou even arranged for Shinan Hui to join his company. The night breeze stirred the curtains, and the neon lights outside flickered on and off. The two of them often used the pretense of working late into the night to engage in their sordid affairs in the study. That day, I heard Shin Un-hai's coquettish voice drift from around the stairwell corner. Brother-in-law, should we sew pearls or diamonds onto the cuffs? Her words carried a deliberately husky, seductive tone, like two snakes slithering into a sewer, rustling in the darkness. I fished my phone from my pocket, watching the figures of the two on the screen. This sordid scene, along with their conversation, had already been captured in real time by the hidden camera and stored in my phone. The college entrance exams arrived as scheduled. Our whole family held up a banner wishing a victorious start to cheer on Xiaojun. Tensions simmered beneath the surface between the adults, yet I chose to maintain this facade of harmony, also that before our child stepped into the examination hall, a warm illusion of home could still linger in their heart. After all, the bubble was about to burst. During the college entrance exams, Xiaojun was in top form, emerging from each test with a beaming smile. When the final bell rang, he walked out of the examination hall side by side with Lin Xiaowan, the daughter of Teacher Lin, the joy of youth sparkling in their eyes and smiles. These two deskmates, who had long dominated the top two spots in their grade, now stood like a pair of slender, upright poplar saplings, brimming with vibrant vitality. Xiaojun and Lin Xiaowan, the daughter of Teacher Lin, walked side by side out of the examination hall, their youthful energy palpable in the air. The day of the results release had finally arrived, and the school had organized all senior year students to check their scores together. As expected, Xiaojun and Lin Xiaowan unsurprisingly took first and second place in the grade respectively, with both of their scores surpassing the previous year's admission thresholds for Peking and Tsinghua universities. Mr. Lin patted both of their shoulders with a heartened smile, but after the initial cheers, the classmates' expressions turned to regret. Everyone had heard that Xiaojun was going abroad. Xiaojun, are you really not staying in the country? Lin Xiaowan's eyes were filled with reluctance to see him go. These two deskmates, who had been rivals for years, could now read the same sense of loss in each other's eyes. They were desk mates, close friends, and the person Xiao Jun had quietly admired for so long, yet never dared to confess his feelings to. A sense of desolation washed over Xiao Jun. Even as his classmates buzzed with envy around him, he turned to look at me, his eyes brimming with reluctance. Mom, I want to stay in the country. Here were the family he knew so well, and the girl he secretly admired. Son, the scores are out. It's time to come with your father, said Guchenzhou as he arrived, flanked by bodyguards. His icy gaze fell upon me. Choo-choo, don't forget your promise. Shin Eunhai followed behind on her stilettos, her fingers unconsciously stroking the pearl necklace at her throat. That was the Mother's Day gift Guchenzhou had bought to curry favor with me. I had flatly refused it, saying it was impractical for work, and now it was draped around her neck. Their bodyguards flanked them on either side, casting long shadows down the corridor. Guchenzhou's tone dripped with the arrogance of a victor, as if he had long regarded us, mother and son, as fish on the chopping block. The cold sneer that curled Shin Eunhui's lips as she lowered her gaze was identical to the one I saw in my previous life. As I lay dying, she beckoned to Xiao Jun. Xiao Jun, come here. Your aunt has prepared lots of things for your trip abroad. They carried themselves with an air of absolute certainty. I gazed at the camphor tree swaying on the school playground. Sunlight filtered through the dense layers of leaves, casting shimmering, gold-flecked patterns on the notice board displaying the exam results. The long con, baited with familial affection, had finally reached its moment of reckoning. I heard my own voice, calmer than I'd imagined. Guchenzhou, let's start with you forging a guardian's signature to drop out of school. Before, to avoid disrupting my son's college entrance exams, I hadn't wanted to make a scene. Well, now it's my turn to settle the score. 8, Shin Chu-chu. Have you lost your mind? I'm Xiaojuan's biological father. How can you even talk about forgery? I knew he'd say something like that. I immediately pulled out our divorce agreement from 10 years ago. Back then, when you abandoned Xiaojun and me, you voluntarily gave up all custody and guardianship rights. It's all here in black and white, with your red thumbprint right on it. Before he could even argue, I produced the household register in the householder column. My name was clearly printed, my relationship to Xiaojun plainly stated, all stamped with the bright red official seal of the local police station. As for you forging my signature to withdraw him from school, I tapped open the surveillance footage on my phone, where his insincere smile to the head teacher was captured in perfect clarity. The office cameras caught it all. Mr. Gu, care to take a closer look? Everyone present turned to look at Guchenzhou in shock upon hearing his words. To think there could be such a cold-hearted father, one who willingly gave up custody to rid himself of the burden of his wife and child, only to now try and control his son's life under the guise of paternal love. The classmates who had once envied Xiao Jun for having a wealthy father immediately fell silent, their gazes now filled with apology and pity for the boy. It was only then that they realized their past jokes about him being a rich second generation had actually been rubbing salt in their classmates' wounds. Guchenzhou's face turned ashen, clearly caught off guard by my public airing of the past. Clenching his suit cuff to rein in his anger, he shifted to a gentle tone. Choo-choo, let's discuss this at home, okay? Not in front of our child's classmates. When you abandoned your wife and child 10 years ago, did you ever imagine this day? I slapped the divorce papers onto the hallway bench, playing the devoted husband now. Too late, Xiaojun won't go abroad with you, and I won't remarry you. His family, his teachers, his friends are all here, and you, I met the storm of malice churning in his eyes, enunciating each word with icy clarity. I suggest you get lost, while I'm still showing you mercy. 9. Guchenzhou's face darkened instantly. With a wave of his hand, over a dozen black-suited bodyguards jumped out of the vehicle. Shin Chu-chu, I'm telling you for the last time, come home with me. Before he had even finished speaking, his bodyguards fanned out in a semicircle. Their gravelly voices held a clear threat for the onlookers. Be smart and don't make a scene. This is the Gu family's private business. Anyone who dares interfere. Everyone knew Guchenzhou was the city's rising star. The newly completed science building at the school still bore a plaque with his name as the donor. The school administrators and teachers exchanged uneasy glances, none daring to step forward at a time like this. It was the hot-blooded students who reacted, clenching their fists. One of the young men grabbed a broom and charged forward, shouting, picking on a woman and a child. What kind of man does that? Someone tried to discreetly call the police, but a bodyguard snatched the phone and smashed it on the ground. This act provoked outrage, and a shoving match broke out between the two sides. But how could this group of teenagers possibly stand a chance against professionally trained bodyguards? Seeing the boy at the front about to be shoved to the ground, Teacher Lin rushed out and shielded the child. The children's shrieks pierced the air. Shinun Hai put on a sickly sweet, fake voice and coaxed, "Sis, why are you being so foolish now of all times? Wouldn't it be better to go abroad with your husband and live a life of ease? What's all this fuss about? You still remember she's your sister," roared Auntie Pang, charging over with the neighbors in tow, brooms raised. Before Shinun Hai could react, a sharp slap landed hard across her face, the mark immediately swelling on her pallid cheek. Shinun Hui covered her face and shrieked, "Are you insane? How dare you hit me? You're exactly who I'm hitting. And after you grew up eating from every household in our alley, look at this homewrecker," carrying on with her own brother-in-law, destroying her own sister's family. As Auntie Fatty's furious shouts rang out, a flurry of photos rained down from the sky. In every photo, Shinun Hai is nestled in Gu Chinzhou's arms, their posture unbearably intimate. These images, which had tormented me through countless late-night texts, were finally brought into the light. In my past life, Shinun Hai would send these intimate photos to torment me during every one of those lonely, desolate nights. "These are all the lovely gifts you once sent me." I stepped on the photos as I walked towards Shinun Hai. "Since you're so fond of sharing, let the entire school enjoy the show today." She couldn't even process my words at that moment, just frantically scrambling on the ground with a ghostly pale face, desperately trying to snatch back those unsightly images from the gawking students. All these photos were gathered by Auntie Pang, the private detective who keeps to herself at the end of the alley and specializes in catching cheating spouses. At that moment, she was squatting on the steps with a cigarette in her mouth, giving me a thumbs up. When I made the request to Auntie Pang that night, she slapped her thigh in righteous fury. "Unbelievable, that backstabbing little wretch. You raised her for over a decade, and she turns around to steal her own sister's man. What a heartless monster." Gripping my wrist firmly, she vowed, "Don't you worry, girl, I'll make sure you get your payback." Amidst the rising clamor, Auntie Pang led the neighbors to form a human wall in front of the students. The blonde girl at the front, brandishing a shovel, was the local enforcer. Even the neighborhood tough who used to shake me down for protection money had to call her Big Sis. Back when she was homeless, I'd given her a few bowls of spicy hot pot to stave off hunger. Ever since then, she'd become my guardian. Not only did the thugs stop causing trouble at the stall, but even the ones who used to demand protection money would cross the street to avoid me now. "Anyone who lays a finger on my sister or my nephew today will have to go through me." She spat her cigarette butt to the ground, slamming her shovel down with a loud clang. "That's right, we'll fight. People from the shantytown aren't to be messed with. Who do you think you're looking down on? Choo-choo, you must be blind to end up with a scumbag like him. After raising her for over a decade, your own sister turns out to be an ungrateful wretch. You've been slaving away day and night at your hot pot stall, and she's off cozying up to your husband, living the easy life. We should have just kept running the stall. At least we wouldn't have to put up with this humiliation." Everyone was shouting curses all at once. Someone hurled rotten vegetables at Gu Chinzhou's feet, while another person pulled me behind them for protection. Words that sounded like accusations somehow filled my heart with warmth. It turns out that in this city of steel and concrete, the warmest light has always been hidden in the humble, bustling life of the shantytown. Back when our family was down on our luck and living in the shantytown, if it weren't for the neighbors, this family giving us some vegetables, that one lending a hand, I, a woman alone, could never have held this family together. Gu Chinzhou finally flew into a rage from shame, waving his arm, he shouted, "Get them! Take them alive." Amidst the shoving, a scuffle erupted in an instant. Despite the neighbors desperately trying to block them with brooms and shovels, they were no match for the well-trained bodyguards. Just as the situation reached a stalemate, a sharp shout cut through the chaos. "Stop!" Gu Chinzhou turned his head impatiently, only to fall instantly silent as if choked. A man in a sharp suit stood not far away, flanked by two equally impeccably dressed men, exuding an aura of formidable authority. "Quite the impressive entrance, Mr. Gu." The man in the center spoke with a calm yet intensely intimidating presence. At the sight of him, a cold sweat instantly broke out on Gu Chinzhou's temple. He instinctively lowered his head and gestured for his bodyguards to step back. 10, Uncle Yu. Even after a decade apart, I recognized my old friend in an instant. Uncle Yu was my late father's most trusted subordinate. As he made his way through the crowd, his temples were now streaked with silver, yet his eyes remained as sharp and clear as ever. The moment I saw him, I knew, this game was mine to win. Uncle Yu made his way through the crowd, his face a picture of paternal affection as he looked at Xiao Jun, his eyes brimming with pride. "Choo-choo, you've raised the boy wonderfully." Then he turned his gaze to Gu Chinzhou, and the look in his eyes behind his glasses turned icy cold in an instant. Gu Chinzhou, I am deeply disappointed in you, Gu. Chinzhou's back instantly hunched over, as if his very spine had been ripped out. He didn't even dare to lift his head amidst the hushed whispers around him. His fingers, clenched around his suit trousers, trembled faintly. Not a trace of his earlier arrogance remained. Oblivious to the situation, Shen Enhui clung tightly to Gu Chinzhou's arm and whined, "Brother-in-law, who is this man? Tell him right now who really calls the shots in Jiangqing, this fresh-faced girl, new to the real world." Mistook Gu Chinzhou's act of confronting her former boss and settling her workplace dispute as a display of immense power and influence. Little did she know that the man she called brother-in-law was at that very moment bowing and scraping before Uncle Yu, his ears even flushed red with guilt. Uncle Yu looked at Shen Enhui, his gaze inscrutable, and after a long pause, let out a heavy sigh. Some people are simply beyond teaching. The bespectacled, stern-faced man beside him stepped forward and addressed me with solemn gravity. "Ms. Shen Chu, your late father left a will. It stipulates that it must be read on the very day your son, Shen Xiaojun, turns 18. Please accompany us to where the will is to be read," the man said, gesturing for me to follow. Xiaojun stared at me, dumbfounded, his eyes wide with shock. It had never crossed his mind that his grandfather would leave a will that involved him. I gently placed a hand on his shoulder, my fingertips feeling the tense, rigid muscles of the anxious young man. "Let's go," I said. "Consider this your grandfather's gift for your coming of age, my son," and I got into Uncle Yu's car, while Gu Chinzhou and Shen Enhui followed sheepishly behind in their own vehicle. In the drawing room of a private woodland estate, my mother was already seated and waiting on the sofa. Once everyone was seated, the lawyer, dressed in a crisp suit, retrieved the yellowed will from his leather portfolio. "We will now proceed to read the last will and testament of the late Mr. Shin Yung-ho." The lawyer raised the envelope sealed with wax, slowly rotating it before the assembled group to confirm the seal was intact. Only then did he carefully slice through the wax with a silver letter opener and withdraw the yellowed parchment of the will. "I, Shin Zhenghao, hereby decree that the custodianship of the Overseas Trust Fund shall be formally transferred to the designated guardian on the day my grandson reaches the age of 18. The lawyer slid a gilded document toward me, his gaze through his lenses one of measured caution. "Ms. Shen. Before his passing, the late Mr. Shen established a dedicated trust fund overseas, with a total value of $1 billion US. According to the terms of the will, once your grandson, Shen Xiaojun, turns 18, you will assume custodianship. This authority will then be formally transferred to him upon his 30th birthday." My fingertips brushed over the raised, gilded emblem on the document, and I heard Shen Enhui's sharp intake of breath. Gu Chinzhou shot to his feet, his office chair scraping a harsh sound against the floor, only to sink back down under Uncle Yu's icy, heavy gaze. With the whole truth laid bare, Gu Chinzhou's true motive for suddenly reappearing after 10 years to beg for a reconciliation was finally exposed for all to see. His only goal was to regain custody of Xiaojun, thereby gaining legitimate control over the boys' trust fund. "You're abandoning Xiao Jun and me overseas to fend for ourselves, cutting us off from the truth forever." 11. He slumped in the chair, his tie askew, his face ashen. He looked like a clown stripped of his finery, his very fingertips trembling. The moment the will was finished, Shen Enhui shot to her feet. "What about me? I'm father's daughter too. Why isn't my name in the will? How can the trust fund have nothing to do with me?" She snatched the water glass from the table and hurled it against the wall. Amidst the shattering of glass, tears streamed down her face in large drops. "I am father's own flesh and blood too." "Shut your mouth." Her mother slammed her palm on the table, her eyes flashing with the authority of the matriarch of the Shen family from years past. "Shen Enhui, the Enhui in your name, the grace and favor, was a blessing bestowed upon you by the Shen family. Did we ever stint on your food, clothing, or anything you needed growing up? When your older sister ran a Malatang stall to put you through school, she wouldn't even spare an egg for herself. The Shen family raised you for over a decade, paid for your university, helped you find a job. Just think about what you've done to us in return." The mother gasped heavily, jabbing a finger at Gu Chinzhou. "You conspired with an outsider to plot against our Shen family. You schemed to trick my daughter and grandson into going abroad to die." A recording played in the silent reception room, the speaker emitting Shen Enhui's shrill complaint. "Brother-in-law, why haven't Shen Chu and that little bastard left yet? I'm getting impatient." Gu Chinzhou's low chuckle was sinister. "What's the rush? The fish has already taken the bait. The moment their plane lands, I'll seize their passports and all their money. From then on, they'll be left to fend for themselves, never able to return to the country. When that time comes, all the money will be ours." Unspeakable sounds poured from the recording. The mother covered Xiao Jun's ears, led him outside, and entrusted him to the security guard's care. All of this evidence was obtained through the methods of Auntie Pang, a private detective with decades of experience. Even a lifetime later, hearing this content still sent a chill down my spine. Gu Chenzhou immediately denied it. This is a frame-up. Shin Eunhai seduced me and forced me into it. Chu, you've always been soft-hearted. You have to believe me this time. He struggled to get up, trying to explain himself to me, but was pinned down firmly in his seat by the two security guards beside him. Seeing Gu Chenzhou stab her in the back, Shin Eunhui dropped the act and tore off his mask right then and there. You treacherous bastard, you burned the bridge after crossing it. It was you who came to me the moment you returned to the country, offering to help me reclaim everything that's rightfully mine. Shin Eunhui had completely lost it by this point. She turned to her mother, demanding hysterically, I'm father's biological daughter too, so why have I been treated differently by you all? Since I was a child, why is it that Shin Chuchu got to live in a villa and attend elite schools from a young age, while I was stuck in a public school, wearing her hand-me-downs? Why wasn't I even mentioned? Not a single word. In the will, my mother had finally had enough. That's enough, you ungrateful wretch. You're not even a true member of the Shin family. When the family went bankrupt the year you turned 12, it was Chuchu who sold all her jewelry to pay for your education, and now you have the nerve to complain about being treated differently. Search your conscience. What has the Shin family ever done to wrong you? Shin Eunhui, still stubbornly clinging to her delusion, hurled insults at my mother. You old hag, you just refuse to face reality and admit that your husband cheated on you. I have proof. She directly flung out a paternity test report. The results showed a 99% probability of a biological match between her and Shin Zhenghao. 12. Her mother shook her head, helpless. In the face of her stubborn delusion, this report is a forgery. You are not Shin Zhenghao's daughter. Uncle Yu shot to his feet. He turned to the mother, his eyes filled with remorse. Madam Shin, I'm sorry. I simply couldn't bear it any longer. I couldn't follow the late Mr. Shin's final wishes. As everyone present looked on in confusion, he flung another paternity test report down in front of Shin Eunhai. Moments later, Shin Eunhai stared at the report in disbelief and cried out, this can't be. Who is this man? I don't know him. I can't be someone else's daughter. I am Shin Youngho's daughter. Uncle Yu revealed the truth in front of everyone. Shin Eunhai was not her father's illegitimate child, but the flesh and blood of his sworn brother. In their early days building a business at the port, her father's sworn brother and partner fell gravely ill. On his deathbed, he tearfully confessed that in his youth, in a drunken stupor, he had fathered a daughter with a village woman back in his hometown. The village woman had long since abandoned the child and remarried elsewhere. The illegitimate girl had been fostered in the village, and if he were to die, she would have no one left to support her. He clutched his father's hand, pleading with him to take in the poor child for the sake of their brotherly bond. His father's heart softened, and he agreed to adopt Shin Eunhai. He also made a pact with his wife to never speak of her origins, in order to protect the girl's dignity. Even when Shin Eunhai hurled cruel words at her, the mother remained steadfast, honoring the promise she made to her husband and never uttering a single word of the truth. Shin Eunhui couldn't accept the truth. Trembling all over, she clutched the forged appraisal report and screamed, this one is real. You're all lying to me. Uncle Yu watched her hysterics with a cold eye. The one in your hand is the fake. Think about it. Who gave you that report? Shin Eunhui whipped her head around to glare at Gu Chenzhou, her finger almost jabbing into his face. It was you. You're the one who gave me this fake report. The memory suddenly hit her. That smile on his face 3 months ago, when he'd slipped the report into her bag at the cafe. You lied to me. You told me the Shin family owed me, that I was the true heir, and that if I just helped you secure guardianship, you'd help me get back everything that's rightfully mine. She staggered back half a step. It was you. You told me to persuade Shin Chuchu to remarry you. You told me to switch out mother's blood pressure medication. You said she should die without a trace. You've been using me this whole time. Uncle Yu looked at her, his eyes filled with utter disappointment. After all the Shin family has done for you, look at what you've done. You truly are an ungrateful wretch. Shin Eunhui suddenly collapsed to her knees before Uncle Yu, clutching his legs as she sobbed and pleaded. It was Gu Chenzhou. He took advantage of my ignorance. None of this has anything to do with me. I swear, please, I'm begging you, forgive my foolishness. Uncle Yu wasn't having any of it. He kicked Shin Eunhui aside, and the security guards, knowing what was expected, promptly dragged her out. Next, it was Gu Chenzhou's turn to face the reckoning. 13. Uncle Yu's gaze towards him grew even colder. My mother and I stared at the man responsible for it all, our eyes burning with a hatred so intense it felt like they could weep blood. The man who had wronged us for 2 lifetimes. Even now, he was still trying to defend himself, shifting all the blame onto Shin and Hui, claiming he had been momentarily tempted and led astray. But when Uncle Yu laid stack after stack of documents on the table, Gu Chenzhou had no defense left. Gu Chenzhou, do you remember what a pathetic wretch you were when I saved you 10 years ago? Uncle Yu confronted him, but he was left speechless. 10 years ago, after my father passed away and the Shin family fell into decline, Gu Chenzhou chose that very moment to abandon my mother and me. This boy, whom my father brought home from the orphanage, grew up alongside me. We used to climb the grape trellis at the old house and sneak sips of father's Longjing tea in his study. You could say we were childhood sweethearts. Father personally taught him the ways of business, never imagining that this adopted son, groomed as the heir, would ultimately be the one to push us into the abyss. Our bond was once hailed as a beautiful story by our parents. Everything changed after the Shin group went bankrupt and father passed away. The man, softened by a life of luxury, was thrown into a panic as he went from being a regular on private yachts to a commuter crammed into the subway, and his tailored suits were replaced by a supermarket promotional uniform. It's easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but hard to go from extravagance back to frugality. He tried starting a business, but his former partners, who once greeted him with beaming smiles, now acted as if even handing him a business card would burn their fingers. In less than 6 months, he had burned through the family's last remaining savings. When the utility bills plastered his door, the man who once carved steaks in a Michelin-starred kitchen found himself clutching a worn-out resume at the labor market, eventually following a foreman to a construction site. Unable to bear it any longer, he made the decisive choice to abandon us. He had hoped to flee abroad for a fresh start, but was swindled out of every last penny, his passport even cut to pieces and tossed into a filthy gutter. Despite it all, fortune finally smiled upon him. At his wit's end, he encountered Uncle Yu. Back in the day, Uncle Yu had been sent abroad by his father to lay low before the bankruptcy hit. Firstly, it was to protect the Shin family's offshore trust fund, the old man's final line of defense, hidden away from the eye of the storm. Secondly, it was in the hope that he could leverage his old connections and overseas capital to preserve a spark for the Shin family's eventual resurgence. Uncle Yu rescued him from the hands of human traffickers. He concealed the truth of having abandoned me and chose to deceive Uncle Yu, claiming he had suffered immense hardship back home and had no choice but to go abroad to make a living for his family. Deeply moved, Uncle Yu believed him and took him under his wing, striving together from overseas. In this way, he became indebted to Uncle Yu and, by chance, learned of his father's overseas trust fund. 14. Due to Uncle Yu's sensitive status, it was not convenient for him to return to the country easily. Gu Chenzhou would therefore pretend to return home every year, continuing to deceive Uncle Yu with the fabricated lie that Chu Chu and her son were doing well. It wasn't until the 10th year that he made a high-profile return as Uncle Yu's proxy, under the pretext of expanding the Shin family's new domestic ventures. He transformed into a renowned invisible tycoon in Jiangqing, a legendary figure rumored to have brought massive secret assets to revitalize his hometown. His true motive, however, was to use this as a pretext to remarry me, gain control over the trust fund under Xiao Jun's name, and divert it for his own use. Once free from Uncle Yu's oversight, Gu Chenzhou's true business acumen was laid bare. Within a year of returning to China, the ventures he invested in collapsed one after another due to poor decisions, creating an urgent need to siphon funds from the trust to cover the losses. Little did he know, all his schemes for this lifetime would ultimately come to nothing. Over the years, it wasn't as if he hadn't pulled some shady moves right under Uncle Yu's nose. He embezzled project funds, inflated costs to siphon off cash, and even sold off the overseas company's fixed assets at a steep discount. But out of consideration for his former status as the Shin family's son-in-law, Uncle Yu always chose to turn a blind eye. The truth was finally revealed today. The man he had regarded as the last hope of the Shin family had been deceiving him behind his back for 10 years, even coming perilously close to wiping out the entire bloodline of his benefactor. He decided he would not let this ungrateful scoundrel off the hook. In his belief, ingratitude, the failure to show appreciation, was the greatest evil of human nature, and he could not tolerate it. Seeing that Uncle Yu was dead set on sending him to prison, Gu Chenzhou panicked, his knees buckled, and he collapsed into a kneeling heap right in front of me. Chu Chu, for Xiao Jun's sake, please put in a good word for me. I swear, I'll never dare to covet a single cent from the Shin family again. Let me be your driver, your housekeeper. I'll even kneel and polish your shoes if you want. Think about Xiao Jun. How is he supposed to hold his head up high if he finds out his own father is in prison? Even now, he's still trying to manipulate me. When you heartlessly abandoned us 10 years ago, did you ever think about your son? When you sent people to assassinate us, Did you ever remember you were a father, and now, at this point, you still want to use family ties to guilt trip me? It's utterly pathetic." The angrier I got, the more I spoke, until I finally lashed out and kicked him in the face. He scrambled aside in a panic. Just as the door clicked open, it turned out his son, who had been sent away earlier, had been eavesdropping outside the door the whole time. "You're not my father." The boy's voice trembled as he said, "My family is my mom and my grandma, and my teachers and classmates who care for me. I don't need a father like you." My son turned to look at me, his gaze as firm as steel. "Mom," he said, "bad people should be arrested by the police and dealt with by the law. That's what my teacher taught us." Fighting back tears, I pulled him into my arms. Only then did I realize his slight shoulders were trembling violently. He understood everything, yet he was stronger than I had ever imagined. Gu Chinzhou tried to argue further, but the security guards dragged him away. His wails, mixed with pleas of "Xiaojun, please forgive your father," finally faded into the distance down the corridor. 15 Uncle, you patted my shoulder. I was far too trusting of that bastard. If your mother hadn't reached out to me this time, I might have gone my whole life without knowing the hell you've been living through. I wouldn't have come back. And I'd have been deceived by that scoundrel until the day I died. Uncle, you solemnly promised me that Gu Chinzhou and Shinunhai would get their just deserts. From now on, no one would meddle in my life. I clutched my father's last letter, tears streaming down my face in heavy drops. My mother, leaning on her cane, slowly walked over and pulled me into an embrace, patting my back gently. "The debts from our past lives are settled. From now on, we'll live a steady, honest life. Your father is watching from heaven, and he can finally rest easy." I wiped away my tears and nodded firmly. In my past life, after I went abroad, my mother fell into the clutches of Gu Chinzhou and Shinunhui. They starved her, denied her warm clothes, and secretly swapped her medication to hasten the deterioration of her condition. By the time she discovered the truth, that her daughter and grandson had been lured abroad to their deaths, she tried to call for help, only to find herself under house arrest. She finally discovered that the person Gu Chinzhou contacted every week was her father's most trusted apprentice before his death. She managed to obtain the life-saving phone number, but the moment she tried to dial, Gu Chinzhou pushed her down the stairs. She was still alive, but the two of them forged a death certificate and rushed her to the crematorium. With her last breath, she prayed desperately, begging heaven for one more chance to save her daughter. Her prayers were answered. Reborn at last, the very first thing she did was dial the number etched into her very soul. To avoid tipping them off, she swallowed her disgust and played along with that wretched pair, not even letting me or Xiaojun catch on. The moment she saw me firmly reject Gu Chinzhou's plea for reconciliation, she knew her daughter had returned, carrying the hatred of a past life. It was on a certain night, as I tried to persuade my mother to help me sneak her away. She took my hand and said, "My child, the Shin family's way out has never been to run away." Mother laid out her entire plan to me. I held my mother, healthy in this life, and wept bitterly. So it's true, when parents love their children, they truly plan for their entire future. Gu Chinzhou's verdict was announced. He was convicted of intentional homicide and multiple economic crimes. As the economic crimes involved overseas jurisdictions, he will serve 13 years domestically before being extradited to continue his sentence abroad. He's facing a life sentence with no chance of ever getting near me again. As for Shinunhai, she went completely insane upon hearing the sentence. Even as they dragged her into the psychiatric hospital, she was still screaming, "The Shin family wronged me." The psychiatric facility she was committed to is one of Uncle Yu's properties. What awaits her is unimaginable punishment. For the rest of her life, until her dying breath, she will never escape this dark prison. 16 The September breeze carried the sweet, delicate fragrance of osmanthus flowers as it brushed against our faces. I stood at the entrance of Tsinghua University, pushing my mother's wheelchair, watching Xiaojun walk side by side with the girl he admired. My mother gently patted my hand and said, "You see, we made it through." Yes, we made it through. The blood and tears of a past life will, in the sunlight of this one, forge the strongest armor. We watched with joy as our children stepped happily into their dream schools, seeing them off toward a bright future. The end. Story 2. As they drew 800 cubic centimeters of my blood, I heard Pei Jinchuan's laughter from the lounge next door. That should finally teach that leech a lesson. The nurse had just pulled out the needle, and my vision was still swimming. Leaning against the wall, I shuffled over. Through the crack in the door, I saw Pei Jinchuan, who was supposed to be in the ICU, with half of the bandage on his forehead peeled off, revealing perfectly unblemished skin underneath. Did Wen Yan really donate 800 cubic centimeters this time? The second young master of the Pei family asked, raising a glass of champagne. "Brother, that's a ruthless move. Pei Jinchuan tore off the remaining bandage, his tone as casual as if discussing the weather. 98 times, even the thickest skin should know when to quit. I looked down at the needle marks on my arm, where beads of blood were welling up. 3 hours ago, the butler had called me in tears, saying Pei Jinchuan was hemorrhaging from a car crash and begging me to rush to the hospital. I was so frantic that I lost a shoe running out the door, terrified he might die. How ridiculous. The lounge suddenly fell silent. I looked up and met Pei Jinchuan's eyes. He frowned. How did you? I turned and walked away, hearing the sound of a shattering cup behind me. Pei Jinchuan called my name from behind. I ran into the fire escape, only to find my hands were shaking too much to press the elevator button. The rain was pouring down in the hospital's back alley. Crouching beside the trash can, I dialed the number at the very bottom of my contact list. Dad, I spat out the blood in my mouth. I'm here to take back what's mine. There was a 3-second silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard my father's voice, thick with suppressed emotion. Send me your location. 20 minutes. Raindrops pelted my face, mingling with my tears. I fished out the business card I'd kept hidden in my wallet for 7 years. The gilded letters read Wen Yuan, chairman of Wen Group, its corners now worn and frayed. The year I turned 15, the couple who claimed to be my biological parents came to the Pei family hiding around the corner of the staircase. I heard Pei Jinchuan's father say, Wen Yan was indeed adopted by us from the orphanage, but all these years, 50 million, the imposing man said, for my daughter's 10 years, that's 50 million a day. Mrs. Pei drew a sharp breath. I was only worried about one thing. Pei Jinchuan's depression had just improved, and the doctor said he couldn't handle any more stress because just the night before, he had leaned on my shoulder and said, Nian Nian, what would I do without you? So I chose to stay, begging my parents for more time. They left their contact information and sent someone to check on me every month. Each time, I would tell them, just a little longer. Brother Jinchuan still needs me. A line of black Maybachs glided to a silent halt before me in the curtain of rain. The door of the lead car opened, and Wen Yuan strode over under an umbrella, taking off his overcoat to wrap around my trembling body. How much blood did they take? His voice turned icy the moment his eyes landed on the bandage on my arm. 800. My vision began to swim with black spots. Dad, I'm so sleepy. In my final moments of consciousness, I heard my father's furious roar, to the hospital. Now, what I didn't see was Pei Jinchuan chasing to the mouth of the alley, watching helplessly as I was carried into the luxury car. The rain soaked the fake bloodstain on his forehead, revealing the pallor of his skin. Beneath, as the motorcade drove away, the window of the last car rolled halfway down. When Yuan shot him a cold glance, a look that froze Pei Jinchuan in his tracks. It was the gaze of a superior looking down on an ant. 2. In the Wen family's private medical suite, 3 doctors attended to me. Her hemoglobin is only 80 gallons, the female doctor with gold-rimmed glasses said, her voice trembling. That's severe anemia. I lay on the examination table, staring at the crystal chandelier on the ceiling. This light is so bright. Much better than that old, flickering lamp back at the Pei family villa. The bone density scan shows osteoporosis, another doctor said, flipping through the report. With a severe vitamin D deficiency. Father stood by the window, his back rigid as an iron plate. He didn't utter a single word the entire way from the hospital to the Wen family estate. Multiple old scars on the skin. Slight ulceration in the stomach. Enough. Father suddenly spoke. The infirmary fell silent in an instant. He walked to the bedside and gently took my hand. This hand, which struck fear in the business world, was now trembling even more violently than mine. Nian Nian, his voice was hoarse. Tell Daddy, have they not been feeding you all these years? I shook my head. The Pei family didn't exactly skimp on my meals, but I always had to wait until everyone else had finished eating before I could pick up my chopsticks, and Pei Jinchuan always came home in the dead of night after his banquets, so I had to save room in my stomach to make him sobering. Soup. My father brushed his thumb over the dark circles under my eyes. And your sleep. Enough. I lied. Actually, Pei Jinchuan suffers from insomnia and always calls me at 3 in the morning to have me read to him. Butler Lin came in with the medicine. When he saw my medical report, his eyes behind his reading glasses instantly welled up. The young miss was the healthiest as a child. She could even build snowmen in the yard in winter. My nose tingled with emotion. My memories before the age of 7 are hazy, but I have a faint image, a man with a silhouette similar to the old man before me, lifting me onto his shoulders to pick apples. Chairman, the Pei family is on the line, the secretary said softly at the door. They're asking about the young miss. Father sneered. Tell them the whereabouts of the Wen family's daughter is none of an outsider's concern. I instinctively reached for my phone, only to realize I had no idea where I'd lost it. The old phone with the cracked screen held 98 memos, all detailing Pei Jinchuan's dietary restrictions and drug allergies. Nian Nian, my father said, pressing a warm glass of milk into my hands. From today on, you only need to remember 3 things. Your surname is Wen, you are your parents' precious treasure, and you have the right to say no to anyone. The milk was warm and sweet. I took a sip and suddenly choked. This has honey in it. Pei Jinchuan hates sweets more than anything, so I haven't touched sugar for 7 years. Take it slow, my mother said softly, having appeared at my bedside without my noticing. The faint scent of gardenia clung to her. Her fingers brushed over the needle mark from my blood draw. Does it hurt? I shook my head. The invisible hole in my heart aches more than the one in my arm. The Su family's girl is coming back, father said abruptly. There's a banquet next Wednesday. Nian Nian, would you like to go see an old friend? I tightened my grip on the cup. Su Yuan, Pei Jinchuan's white moonlight. Before she went abroad, she once pointed at me and said, because of this parasite, Jinchuan is being kept in a cage. Oh, my God, I heard myself say. My father smiled, a grin that reminded me of the sharks I'd seen in documentaries. 3. Pei Jinchuan smashed the 13th empty bottle against the wall. What do you mean no such person exists? He grabbed his assistant by the collar. How can a living person just vanish into thin air? The assistant, trembling, handed over a tablet. The hospital surveillance shows Miss Wen was taken away by this motorcade. On the screen, each door of the row of black Maybachs bore a silver emblem. Amidst the entwined vines, a calligraphic W was faintly visible. Pei Jinchuan's pupils contracted sharply. He had seen this emblem before, on the list of top-secret partners in his father's safe. The Wen family. His phone vibrated. It was a message from Su Yuan. Jinchuan, I came back to the country early. Surprise. Staring at the screen, he suddenly remembered something and dashed upstairs, yanking open Wen Nian's door. The empty wardrobe stood wide open, with only a few lonely hangers inside. A thin layer of dust had settled on the dressing table. The bottle of cheap moisturizer still sat in the corner. She could never bring herself to buy anything nice for herself. Inside the nightstand drawer, dozens of medical record booklets were stacked in neat, orderly rows. Pei Jinchuan casually flipped one open. 2019 3/12 patient, Wen Nian. Diagnosis, syncope due to excessive fatigue. Recommendation, bed rest. July 8, 2020, patient Wen Nian, acute gastritis. Recommended dietary regulation. November 3, 2021, patient Wen Nian, nutritional anemia. Recommended immediate treatment. A red stamp reading patient refused hospitalization was affixed to the bottom right corner of every page. Pei Jinchuan felt a tightness in his chest. These dates were etched in his memory. March 2019 was when he lost a major bid, drank himself into the hospital, and when Nian kept vigil by his bedside for 3 days. July 2020 was the food poisoning incident. November 2021 his phone rang again, his father's furious roar coming through. Did you offend someone from the Wen family? They just terminated all our collaborations. Pei Jinchuan slumped onto the bed, his hand brushing against something hard under the pillow. It was a sketchbook. Every page was him, his profile during a meeting, the slight furrow of his brow while drinking coffee, his figure leaping on the tennis court. A note was tucked into the last page. Jinchuan's stomach medicine is in the 3rd drawer on the left. The hangover tea recipe is posted inside the fridge. The allergy medicine. The handwriting stopped abruptly, as if interrupted. The butler's panicked shout came from downstairs. Young master, you can't drive, you've been drinking. But the roar of the engine had already torn through the night sky. For the walk-in closet at the Wen family estate is larger than the master bedroom of the Pei residence. Try this one, my mother said, holding up a champagne-colored gown. For Wednesday, as I ran my fingers over the delicate sequins on the skirt, I was suddenly reminded of last year's Pei Group annual gala. I was wearing an out-of-season dress, and Su Yuan's friends gathered around me, laughing. Jinchuan, is your little housemaid joining the group photo too? What did Pei Jinchuan say at that moment? Oh, he said, Nian Nian, go fetch some champagne for everyone. Don't you like it? My mother keenly noticed my distraction. It's a bit too flashy, I said with a forced smile. Do you have anything more understated? My mother sighed, taking a velvet box from the safe. At least wear this. Then, inside the box was a butterfly brooch, its sapphire wings shimmering under the light with the lustrous glow of a starry river. You picked this out yourself for your 5th birthday, my mother said, pinning it to my collar. You were wearing it the day you went missing. I touched the cool gemstone, and a fragmented memory suddenly flashed before me, a pair of large hands lifting me up to a glass display case, saying, Nian Nian, you can pick whichever one you like. Miss, Uncle Lin said from outside the door. Director Yang is here. he's waiting for you to review the acquisition proposal. In the conference room, the suited elites rose in unison, Miss Wen. On the projection screen were the bold words, Pay Shipping Subsidiary Acquisition Plan. As I flipped through the documents, I suddenly let out a laugh. This subsidiary is Pei Jinchuan's pride and joy. He once boasted at a birthday banquet, I'll turn it into the industry benchmark within 3 years. Is there a problem? Director Yang asked nervously. I circled several data points with my pen. These asset valuations are inflated. The actual warehouse turnover rate should be checked against last year's customs records. Then, pointing to another line, I added, this downstream supplier filed for bankruptcy last month. It's highly unlikely we'll recover those accounts receivable. The room fell completely silent. How did you know, Miss Wen? The wastebasket in Pei Jinchuan's study, I smiled, is a treasure trove of information. After the meeting, I walked alone into the garden. The swing from before I was 7 is still there, painted a new color. My phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. The moment the call connected, I recognized that breathing pattern. Wen Yen, Pei Jinchuan's voice was hoarse. We need to talk. The blaring horn in the background made it clear he was still driving. Gazing at the Wen family's private jet descending in the distance, I said softly, that won't be necessary, Mr. Pei. What did you call me? He slammed on the brakes, the screech of tires piercing the air. Listen, whatever game you're playing. Oh, right, I cut him off. Just a reminder, step 3 of the hangover tea recipe is adding honey. You hate sweets, so I always lied and told you it was a special medicinal herb. Hung up, blocked, all in one smooth motion. The night breeze carried the scent from the rose garden. I took a deep breath and tasted freedom. 5. Standing at the entrance to the banquet hall, I took a deep breath, nervous. My father adjusted my necklace. I shook my head, the sapphire resting against my collarbone feeling heavy. This heart of the ocean was the Wen family heirloom, worth half of the Pei family's villa. Remember, my father whispered in my ear, tonight, you only need to do one thing, make sure everyone knows the phoenix of the Wen family has returned. The grand doors swung open, and the clamor in the hall died instantly. Hundreds of gazes shot toward me like arrows. I straightened my back, my heels steady on the marble floor. Is that Wen Yen? Someone gasped. The heiress of the Wen group, and that adopted daughter from the Pei family. Whispers spread like a rising tide. I smiled as I accepted the champagne from the waiter. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Pei Jinchuan in the corner, his glass tilted, the red wine soaking the cuff of his pristine white shirt without him even noticing. Miss Wen, Mr. Sato from Japan's Yamabishi group was the first to approach. I've heard so much about you, I replied in Japanese, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw Pei Jinchuan's eyes widen in shock. He probably had no idea that, in order to help him sort out those Japanese contracts, I had taught myself late into the night, reaching an N1 proficiency level. President Wen, Chairman Li of Yintai squeezed his way over. I hear your company is interested in acquiring a shipping business. I smiled and gave a slight nod. We are indeed evaluating a few potential targets. I deliberately raised my voice, especially the ones with chaotic management and questionable assets. Not far away, Pei Jinchuan's younger brother suddenly choked and broke into a violent coughing fit. The crowd suddenly stirred. A pungent wave of perfume cut through the air as Su Yuan appeared, her arm linked with Pei Jinchuan's, a snow-white dress draping her form. Oh my god, it really is Nian Nian, she exclaimed, dramatically covering her mouth. I almost didn't recognize you. Her gaze swept over my necklace, a flicker of envy and resentment in her eyes. That replica is incredibly convincing. Which shop did you get it from? I swirled my champagne glass. Miss Su, you're as witty as ever. You had the exact same look on your face last time when the editor-in-chief of Vogue called you out on the spot for wearing a knockoff haute couture gown. A few stifled chuckles rippled through the surrounding crowd. Su Yuan's face flushed crimson, her nails digging into Pei Jinchuan's arm. Wen Yen, Pei Jinchuan finally spoke, his voice hoarse. We need to talk. For business matters, please make an appointment with my assistant. I smiled as I turned to the client from France, Monsieur Laurent, enchanté de vous voir. Pei Jinchuan suddenly grabbed my wrist. The sapphire bracelet snapped in the struggle, its beads clattering to the floor. The entire room fell silent. What are you doing, Mr. Pei? I asked calmly, red marks already appearing on my wrist. He seemed startled by his own actions too, his fingers trembling as he let go. Jinchuan is just too shocked. Su Yuan hurriedly tried to smooth things over. After all, someone was just a lowly maid fetching tea and water yesterday. And today, Su Yuan, Pei Jinchuan cut her off sharply. I bent down to pick up a sapphire, blew off the dust, and said, Miss Su, you might not know this, but I had a personal maid when I was just 5. I then casually tossed the gem to the waiter. It's yours. The waiter was stunned. This little pebble was valuable enough to buy the most expensive property in his hometown county. Excuse me. I gave a slight nod and walked toward the mayor's wife, who was waving me over the moment I turned away. My smile finally fell even after 7 years. The scent of cold pine cologne on Pei Jinchuan still makes my heart ache. 6. The night breeze on the terrace was cool. I unfastened the hidden clasp of my corset and let out a long, deep sigh. After playing the part of an elegant socialite all evening, my ribs felt nearly crushed. When did you learn French? I whipped my head around. Pei Jinchuan leaned in the shadows, his tie loosened, his eyes bloodshot. When you had me translate that French email. I turned to leave. 3 in the morning, remember. He stepped sideways, blocking my path. Why pretend to be poor? Did you get a kick out of making a fool of me? In the moonlight, a vein throbbed at his temple. It suddenly reminded me of when he was 17, burning up with a 40-degree fever, his eyes just as red as he refused to let me leave. Mr. Pei, I said, taking half a step back to put some distance between us. The Wen family searched for me for 13 years. In those 13 years, I ate cockroaches in the orphanage, was used as child labor by a foster family, and finally ended up with your Pei family. I let out a light chuckle. You think I should be grateful? He looked as if he'd been slapped. I didn't know. You did know. I cut him off. You know I'm malnourished, yet you still make me eat leftovers. You know I'm anemic, yet you keep drawing my blood. You know. My throat suddenly tightened. You know I like you, so you take advantage of me without mercy. The night wind tousled his hair, revealing that scar I knew all too well when we were 14. He crashed into a rock to save me and needed 7 stitches. From that day on, I vowed to spend my whole life repaying him, but looking back now, I can't even be sure if he truly meant to save me. Looking back now, it was utterly foolish. Brother Jinchuan, Su Yuan's voice called from the hall. Chairman Lin is looking for you. Pei Jinchuan paid no heed, his gaze fixed intently on me. Come back with me. Go back. I nearly laughed out loud. Go back to being your personal blood bank, or your fiancé's punching bag. I never acknowledged her as my fiancé, but you never denied it either, I said, smoothing my skirt, just like you never deny that I'm a parasite the Pei family keeps. He gripped the balcony railing tightly, his knuckles turning white. Those words, I was just saying them for your buddies. I mimicked his tone from that day. Even the thickest skin should know when to take a hint. Su Yuan appeared at the doorway. So this is where you are, she coiled around Pei Jinchuan's arm like a snake. Wen Nian, I heard your family is trying to acquire Pei's Maritime. What a coincidence. I'm in charge of that company now. I waved my phone. Just signed the share transfer agreement. You might want to check your inbox. Miss Su, her face fell, and she fumbled for her phone. Pei Jinchuan snatched it away, the screen's blue glow illuminating his ashen face. When did you? That night you got drunk and complained the subsidiary was a bottomless pit. I smiled. By the way, I've already handed over the evidence of the CFO's fraudulent accounting to the Economic Crime Investigation Unit. Su Yuan suddenly screamed. Jinchuan, she says she's going to report my father. So that's how it is. I looked at Pei Jinchuan with pity. It seems you also don't know that your white moonlight has been stealing your money to support her boy toy. You're lying. Su Yuan raised her hand to slap me. I easily caught her wrist. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I still have the surveillance footage from when you pushed me in the Pei family garden last time. I leaned close to her ear. That's assault, up to 3 years in prison. Pei Jinchuan was thunderstruck. She pushed you. When did that happen? The day I had the miscarriage, I said calmly, dropping the bombshell. Oh, you didn't know about that either. He staggered back, toppling the champagne tower amidst the sound of shattering glass. I turned and walked away. Wen Yan, he roared from behind me. I didn't look back. My heart was pounding wildly in my chest, but my steps remained steady. So lying was this easy. I was never pregnant in the first place. But so what? Let him get a taste of what it's like to be deceived. Assistant Xiao Lin hurried over. President Wen, we found it. The debt black hole at Pei Shipping is 2 billion larger than estimated. Notify the legal department, I said, pulling off my false eyelashes. We're filing a lawsuit for embezzlement against the former management first thing tomorrow morning. What about Mr. Pei? I looked towards the balcony. Pei Jinchuan was gripping Su Yuan's shoulders and shouting. Where was the image of the refined gentleman now? Handle it according to business principles. I slid into the waiting Rolls-Royce. Oh, and take his number off the block list. Kobayashi was taken aback. Why? I gazed at the neon lights streaking past the window. So he can tell me in person how one should go about asking for a favor. As the car crossed the river bridge, my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a multimedia message from Pei Jinchuan, our only photo together, a candid shot I took on his birthday. In the corner of the photo, a small line of text read, "Brother Jinchuan's 28th birthday. I hope I can still spend it with you next year." I pressed the delete button. In the rearview mirror, the city lights hung like an inverted river of stars. 7. In the conference room of Pei Shipping, I flipped through the final report. Twirling a pen between my fingers, in Q4 2019, I pointed at a line of figures. Freighter maintenance costs skyrocketed threefold, while Su Shipbuilding's net profit increased by the exact same amount during the same period. Beads of sweat formed on the foreheads of the former executives sitting across from me. The youngest manager, Mr. Zhang, kept tapping his fingers on the desk as if sending a Morse code. President Wen, the CFO, said, wiping his glasses, "That was the year with all the typhoons." Manager Zhang, I suddenly called on him. "How did your daughter's heart surgery go?" His face turned ashen. How did you know?" "Su Yuan tried to bribe you with a reservation at a Swiss clinic." I closed the folder. "She's been pulling this trick since she was 15. That's exactly how she got the maid to slip laxatives into my skincare products all those years ago." The conference room fell dead silent outside the glass door. The newly hired young staff were peering in with curiosity. Little did they know, this company on the brink of bankruptcy was now operating under the prestigious banner of Wenshire Logistics, with salaries having doubled. 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, I stood up. "I want to see the original scanned copies of all cargo hold lease contracts from the past 3 years. Just as I stepped out of the conference room, Xiaolin approached me and said, "Pei Jinchuan is in your office." I stopped in my tracks. After the awkward end to last week's cocktail party, I thought he'd have the sense to back off. Let him wait. I turned toward the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. The reflection in the mirror had red-rimmed eyes and dark circles underneath, looking as if I'd only slept 4 hours a night for 3 days straight. My phone vibrated. A message from my father. "Have you looked at the physical exam report?" I bit my lip and replied, "Just my usual anemia. I'm on medication for it." But what the doctor said went far beyond that. Trace amounts of thallium residue detected in the body suggest investigating long-term exposure sources. Those terrifying words made me lock away all the old gifts from the Pei family in a safe overnight. When I pushed open the office door, Pei Jinchuan was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window. The morning light gilded his silhouette, and for a moment, it was as if he were still the Jinchuan I used to look up to. "President Wen, quite the grand air you have." He turned around, the dark circles under his eyes even more pronounced than mine. I walked straight to the desk. "President Pei, coming in person. Is this about discussing installment payments for the compensation? I'll buy back that subsidiary at double the price." He slid a document across the table. "Name your terms." I glanced at the offer and let out a laugh. With the Su family's money, I pushed it back. Too late. The dissolution agreement was signed this morning. He slammed his hands on the desk. "That was my life's work. It's my scrap metal now." I opened my laptop. "If there's nothing else, you can see yourself out. I have a merger meeting at 10. The air hung heavy for a few seconds. He suddenly reached out and closed my notebook. "What is it you actually want?" We were so close I could count his eyelashes. I used to dream of being looked at by him like this, but now it just makes me sick. "I want you to know how it feels." I leaned back slowly. "To be thrown away like trash by the person you trusted most." His Adam's apple bobbed. "I didn't. I helped you organize 87 business plans." I cut him off, 41 of which were rejected by the board. "Do you know why the other 46 got through?" I pulled open the drawer and took out a yellowed notebook. "Because I consulted a professional in advance for every single one." He opened the notebook, his fingers trembling slightly. Among the dents, scribbled revision notes were comments like, "Jinchuan likes blue. Use light blue for the cover, and submit this one before his birthday for a higher chance of success. The reason you landed the tech park project last year," I continued, "is because I had my uncle put in a good word for you 3 months in advance. My uncle is the deputy director of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development. I kept this from the Pei family for 10 years. Pei Jinchuan collapsed onto the sofa as if all the strength had been drained from his body. Sunlight fell on the notebook, illuminating the water-stained, wrinkled corners of its pages, a testament to tears. That night, he had held Su Yuan and mocked me for clinging on shamelessly, while I cried myself to sleep in the attic, soaking half my pillow. "Why?" His voice was hoarse. "Didn't you tell me sooner?" "Tell you what," I sneered, "that the Wen family is richer than the Pei family, that I could save you 20 years of struggle." I stood up, looking down at him. "Pei Jinchuan, the only thing you hate more than money is being pitted." His face turned deathly pale, as if seeing me Clearly for the first time the assistant knocked and entered. Mr. When the video conference with Swiss Bank starts in 5 minutes, Pei Jinchuan suddenly grabbed my wrist. 8 o'clock tonight, Riverside Restaurant. His voice was almost inaudible. Please. I pulled my hand back. I'm busy. About your poisoning. He stared at me intently. I have a lead. My blood ran cold. How did he know I was poisoned? I hadn't even told my father. 7 o'clock. I corrected myself. Bring the evidence. The moment he left, Shaolin burst in. We found it. The final destination of Pei Group's 2 billion yuan bad debt. He lowered his voice. Is Su Yuan's underground bank in Macau. I rubbed my temples as another wave of dizziness hit me. Notify the audit team. Focus the investigation on. The world suddenly tilted. I heard Shaolin scream in my ears, while I watched the ceiling rush closer. Director Wen. Director Wen. 8. I opened my eyes to the sterile white ceiling of the hospital. My father sat by the bed, clutching my medical report in his hand, his knuckles white. Dad, why didn't you tell me? He slammed the report onto the bed. Thallium poisoning. Do you have any idea how serious this is? I weakly propped myself up. It might have been accidental exposure. The doctor said it was long-term, low-dose ingestion. My father punched the wall. Those bastards. Those. His voice suddenly choked up. This 50-year-old man wept like a child. I fumbled for his hand and grasped it. It's all right now. Pei Jinchuan is outside. He wiped his face. Says he has crucial evidence. My heart skipped a beat. I nodded. My father shot a fierce glare toward the door, but got up and went out anyway. Pei Jinchuan entered, bringing a chill with him, a USB drive clutched in his hand. The dark circles under his eyes were even more pronounced, his white shirt wrinkled like a rag. You knew all along. I asked directly. He shook his head and handed over the USB drive. I only found it this morning while organizing the files. The screen of the hospital room's TV flickered to life, displaying a surveillance video. The footage showed the Pei family kitchen, with a timestamp indicating the early hours of my 18th birthday. Su Yuan furtively opened the cabinet and poured some powder into my vitamin bottle. There's more. Pei Jinchuan's voice was tight. The second video was from last week. In the Pei family study, Su Yuan said to her father, don't worry. That little brat won't live past 3 years. With thallium, the doctors will never figure it out. A chill ran through my entire body. 3 years, by my count, that leaves less than 8 months. Why are there all these cameras? I zeroed in on the crucial point. Pei Jinchuan gave a bitter smile. My father doesn't trust anyone. He pulled out his phone. I just called the police. Delete it, I said sharply. Call them back right now and say it was a mistake. What? That's murder. It's hard to convict someone for poisoning without substantial harm, I thought quickly, and if we act rashly, we'll never find the mastermind behind this. The Su father and daughter aren't clever enough for this. There's definitely someone else pulling the strings. Pei Jinchuan stood frozen for a moment, then suddenly knelt down, pressing his forehead against the edge of the hospital bed. I'm sorry. I was stunned. That proud, unyielding Pei Jinchuan. His shoulders were now trembling like a small boat caught in a storm. What are you apologizing for? I asked softly. For letting Su Yuan poison me, for taking my blood, or for what you said in the lounge that day, for everything. He lifted his head, his eyes rimmed red, for being blind, for, it's too late. I turned my face away. What's the explanation for the police? He stood up, regaining a trace of his usual composure. We'll say there was a break-in, and checking the security footage revealed it was a misunderstanding. Brilliant, I said sarcastically, just what I'd expect from President Pei. The nurse came in to deliver the medicine, and we both fell silent. It wasn't until she had left that Pei Jinchuan suddenly said, after you left, the house was a complete mess. Oh, Auntie Zhang's hangover soup is all ginger, he said, staring out the window. I can't find my usual gray suit, and, you should be telling these things to your fiancé, I said, swallowing a pill. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. He reached the door, then turned back, pulling a photo from his wallet, a picture of us at 14, at the amusement park. I'm holding a cotton candy, beaming like a flower. He's turned away awkwardly, but sneaking a glance at me. Here, he placed the photo on the nightstand. I should have returned this to you long ago. After the door closed, I finally broke down, burying my face in the pillow to scream in silence. On the back of the photo was a line he had newly written. My eyes have never looked at anyone else. Too late. I pulled out my phone and sent an order to Shaolin. Initiate Plan B. Commence a full acquisition of the Pei family's shares. If we're going to suffer, then let's all go to hell together. 9. Mr. Wen, the financial vulnerabilities at the Pei Group are even more severe than we anticipated. In the conference room at 3 in the morning, Kobayashi switched the projector to the next chart. The red line, like the EKG of a dying patient, showed several eerie spikes at the shareholder capital injection points. The timing of these capital injections. I leaned closer to the screen, was all within the week before the Pay Group's stock price plummeted. The head of legal adjusted his glasses. Classic insider trading. Someone is manipulating the stock price. I was flipping through the confidential documents that had just arrived when my finger suddenly stopped on a page. It was a secret agreement between Pei Jinchuan's father and an overseas company, dated precisely when the Pei family business nearly went bankrupt last year. Notify the media department. I closed the file. We're holding a press conference tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're going to expose the Pei family, Shaolin gasped. But Pei Jinchuan, follow the standard procedure for commercial fraud. I stood up and walked to the window, the city lights blurring into a hazy glow in the rain. Oh, and send a copy of this material anonymously to Pei Jinchuan's private email. He has the right to be the first to know what kind of man his father is. 10. My phone was buzzing frantically just as I had finished showering. Pei Jinchuan's name flashed on the screen. It was the first time I'd taken him off my block list since the cocktail party. Did you read the file? I got straight to the point. The breathing on the other end of the line was heavy. Where are you? We need to talk. No need, it's necessary, he said hoarsely. My father. I had no idea about any of that. I gazed at the gradually brightening sky outside the window. Do you know why I insisted on acquiring the shipping company? Silence. Because it's the only clean asset you have left, I said, running my finger along the rim of the coffee cup. Your father mortgaged the other divisions 3 times over. The sound of shattering glass came through the phone, followed by heavy, ragged breathing. I could almost see him, kneeling on the floor, clutching his hair. Just like the day 16-year-old Pei Jinchuan completely broke down in the garden shed after discovering his mother's affair back then. I held him until dawn. Now, nothing connects us but cold electronic signals. The press conference is at 10, I finally said. You can come see the truth for yourself. After hanging up the phone, a new email notification popped up on the computer. Su Yuan actually gave an exclusive interview to the financial channel, with the glaring title, Exposing the True Face of the Ungrateful Adopted Daughter, Wen Yin. In the video, she was crying pitifully. The Pei family provided for her for over a decade, and now she bites the hand that fed her. The comment section was already flooded with ungrateful wretch and scheming woman. I sneered and dialed my father's number. Dad, bring the blue notebook from the left drawer of my study to the press conference. That was my diary from when I was 15, chronicling every single day and night that was trampled upon. 11. The press conference was packed with journalists. As I walked onto the stage, the camera flashes were blinding. In the corner of the front row, Pei Jinchuan wore a black hoodie, the dark circles under his eyes still prominent, perhaps even more so than before. Everyone, I pulled up the prepared slides, regarding the legality of the Wen Group's acquisition of Pei Maritime. During the Candé session, a male reporter in gold-rimmed glasses suddenly raised his hand. President Wen, how do you respond to Miss Su's accusation of ingratitude? The room fell silent instantly. I glanced at Pei Jinchuan. He was leaning forward, his fingers digging into his palms. Perfect timing. I signaled my assistant to bring over a transparent box. This contains my entire diary from when I was 15. How about we randomly pick a page and read it aloud for everyone? The reporter stirred with excitement. The man with the gold-rimmed glasses volunteered, stepped forward, and pulled out a page to read. May 12th, rain. Jinchuan got angry again and smashed a bowl. I cut my hand while picking up the pieces. And Pei said the medical expenses will be deducted from next month's allowance. It's fine. I was going to use my allowance to buy a birthday gift for brother Jinchuan anyway today. He complimented the tie Su Yuan gave him. But I was the one who stayed up 3 nights making it by hand. The venue fell completely silent. I played another audio clip, and Su Yuan's shrill voice echoed through the room. How dare a parasite like you have feelings for Jinchuan? Let me tell you, he said himself, you're not even as good as the maid in his house. This is, Pei Jinchuan shot to his feet, a recording from 3 years ago when Su Yuan came to persuade me to back off. I explained calmly. By the way, the car accident that day was also her doing. The screen switched to hospital surveillance footage, showing Su Yuan secretly pulling out my blood transfusion needle. The timestamp in the corner of the screen showed the exact day Pei Jinchuan accused me of fainting to gain sympathy. Pei Jinchuan's face turned deathly pale, as if he had been stabbed in the chest. Finally, I said, opening the safe, here are the genuine financial statements for the Pei Group from the past 5 years. The reporter surged forward amid the chaos. Pei Jinchuan fought his way against the crowd to the front of the stage, his eyes bloodshot. Those things, I never knew. Because you never asked. I turned off the microphone, letting only him hear. Just like you never asked why I always wear long sleeves, why I'm afraid of the dark, why, when Nyen, Suyuan burst into the venue, two police officers following close behind her, you're framing me. I smiled and gave a slight nod towards the door. The two officers immediately intercepted her. Miss Su, you are suspected of intentional assault and commercial fraud. Please cooperate with the investigation. The entire room erupted in an uproar as Suyuan struggled. Her phone clattered to the floor, its screen lighting up. It was her chat history with Pei Jinchuan's father. Old Pei, that girl has found the ledger. We need to deal with this quickly. Pei Jinchuan staggered back as if struck by lightning. Colliding with the wall, I picked up the microphone. Everyone, this is the real focus of today's press conference. 3 hours later, Mr. Pei was taken away from the airport VIP lounge. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in the office, watching the media frantically swarm the Pei family's vehicles downstairs. Mr. Wen, Shaolin said, knocking on the door before entering. Pei Jinchuan is waiting for you in the garage. The elevator descended to B2. In the empty garage, he was the only one standing there, leaning against the wall. His suit was crumpled, his tie was missing, and he was clutching a document folder in his hand. I've figured it all out, he said, his voice hoarse. Suyuan intercepted every message you tried to send me, including that note from when you were 15, saying you were going to leave. I unlocked the car door, my face expressionless. So I thought you, he choked up, I thought you stayed for the money. I let out a cold laugh. Now that you know my family has more money than yours, how does it feel? Worse than death. He handed over a file folder. Everything she's done all these years, it's all in here. I didn't answer. The police have already opened a case. And also, he swallowed with difficulty, my father might know about you being poisoned. My heart clenched. I turned to face him. Proof, there's a safe in his study. Pei Jinchuan handed over a key. The combination is your birthday. The irony of it made me laugh out loud. As I took the keys, he suddenly grabbed my wrist. Give me 5 minutes, just 5. The dim, yellowish light of the underground garage cast a golden outline around his silhouette. For a fleeting moment, I saw that 17-year-old boy again, tilting the umbrella completely over me in the rain. Go on. I hired a private investigator. His voice trembled, and found out that your disappearance when you were 7 might not have been an accident. I froze. What do you mean? Someone paid the nanny to abandon you at the amusement park. He handed over a photograph. That nanny later became the Su family's housekeeper. The woman in the photo is holding a young Su Yuan, with the Su family villa in the background. My temples were throbbing. I remembered this woman. She bought me cotton candy once and promised to take me to see the dolphin that could do magic. Why are you telling me this now? Atonement. His eyes were red-rimmed. Even though I have no right to say it anymore, I truly am so sorry. A tear fell onto the photograph. Only then did I realize I was trembling, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the keys. Pei Jinchuan suddenly stepped forward, his arms encircling my shoulders in a tentative, almost fragile hold, as if afraid I might shatter like porcelain. The familiar scent of cold pine enveloped me, and for a fleeting second, I found myself craving that familiar fragrance. Don't touch me. I shoved him away sharply. Do you think playing the good guy now can make up for anything? No. He staggered back. Just what? I pulled open the car door, realized I have some use, found out the Wen family can save the Pei family. He shook his head, tears glistening in the light. Just finally understood, what a precious thing I've lost. The roar of the engine drowned out his final words in the rearview mirror. His figure grew smaller and smaller, until it finally became just a speck in the darkness, just like the place I had always occupied in his world all those years. My phone lit up with a new message from my father, his latest medical report. Thallium levels have risen again. We must find the source of the ongoing contamination. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. If he even gave me the key to the Pei family safe, then Pei Jinchuan truly had no idea. So, who was the one who administered the poison? 13. The conference room on the top floor of the Wen building. My pale face was reflected in the glass wall. The German client across from me was rattling off amendment suggestions to the terms, and my fingertips trembled slightly as I gripped my pen. Frau Wen, sind Sie einverstanden, Ms. Wen, do you agree? I replied fluently in German, while noticing Shaolin gesturing anxiously at the door. A sudden, sharp cramp seized my stomach. I forced myself to keep a straight face and signed the final document. The moment the client left, I staggered and grabbed the edge of the desk. A cold sweat instantly soaked through the back of my shirt. Mr. Wen, Shaolin rushed in to support me. The doctor said you shouldn't. Is Pei Jinchuan in the reception room? I cut her off, swallowing 2 painkillers. He's been waiting for 4 hours, Kobayashi whispered. He says he won't leave without seeing you. I adjusted my collar in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. The woman in the mirror wore a sharp suit, her lips pale from being pressed tightly together. Who would have thought that within this shell, thallium was slowly eating away at my nervous system? Let him in. When Pei Jinchuan walked in, I barely recognized him. His once immaculate hair was disheveled and sticking out. His suit was wrinkled like a rag, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. The only thing unchanged was the scent of cool pine and faint tobacco that clung to him. Wen Yen, his voice was gravelly with strain. The Pei Group is going under. I gestured for him to sit, while I remained standing behind my desk, maintaining a safe distance. According to Article 16 of the Enterprise Bankruptcy Law, you still have a 30-day debt restructuring period. Restructuring? He gave a bitter laugh. Every bank has locked its doors to us. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling window, casting fragmented shadows across his haggard face. A hazy memory surfaced of my university days, when he first showed me around the Pei Group headquarters. Back then, he pointed at the CEO's office and declared, "One day, I'll take Pei Group public and increase its market value tenfold." Now, that very office was likely plastered with creditors' seizure notices. When Yen, he suddenly dropped to his knees, the impact against the marble floor a dull thud. "I'm begging you." My fingers dug unconsciously into my palms. Pei Jinchuan, who once stood so high and mighty, now lay prostrate at my feet like a beaten dog. "Get up," I said, my voice tight. "Don't do this. You're the only one who can save the Pei Group." He looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "I know I have no right to ask this of you, but those employees, many have been with the Pei family for over a decade." My heart felt as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand. That's the most infuriating thing about Pei Jinchuan. He always knows exactly where my weak spot is. 3 conditions, I said, turning to face the window. First, full cooperation with the anti-fraud investigation. Second, the core assets are to be placed under the trusteeship of the Wen Group. Third, my throat tightened. Go to the police station yourself and get Su Yuan released on bail. What? He shot to his feet. "She almost killed you. I need her to identify the real mastermind." I tapped my tablet, pulling up a surveillance clip of Su Yuan's father sneaking into the study of my family's old house late at night. "Look at the date." Pei Jinchuan's face instantly paled. "It was the day before you disappeared." "What I need is in the Su family study," I said, turning off the screen. "Are you in or not?" His knuckles cracked as he clenched his fist. "I'm in." The office door suddenly swung open, and the delegation from the French Rhine group filed in. The blonde woman at the front warmly extended her hand to me. "Madame Wen, enchanté. Miss Wen, delighted to meet you." I instantly switched to fluent French and began briefing them on the project's progress. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Pei Jinchuan frozen in place, staring in shock as I chatted and laughed with the foreign clients. "And this is?" the blonde woman asked curiously, looking toward Pei Jinchuan, "A former business partner," I replied in English. "Just leaving." Pei Jinchuan's face turned ashen as he silently retreated to a corner. I deliberately ignored him and continued discussing technical specifications with the client in French, occasionally interjecting with a few German phrases to explain the jargon. The entire negotiation flowed seamlessly, and even I was surprised by my own composure in that moment. 2 hours later, after seeing the client off, I found Pei Jinchuan still standing there, a cup of hot tea now in his hand. "When did you learn French?" he asked softly. "And German." "Around the time you had me translating those technical documents." I loosened my hair bun, letting my long hair cascade down. 4 hours of sleep a night is enough time to learn a great many things. The teacup in his hand trembled, spilling tea onto his cuff. It was the chrysanthemum tea I always brewed for him, meant to cool and soothe. "Is there something else?" I asked pointedly. "Shaolin, just let it slip," he said, his voice trembling. "The anonymous donor to the South City Children's Hospital. Was that you?" My fingers froze. That hospital specializing in blood diseases was where Pei Jinchuan's mother passed away. He makes a donation there every year, never knowing that the mysterious donor W on the account is me. "Just a tax write-off," I said, closing my laptop. "See yourself out." He reached the door and turned back. "Wen Yen, if we could do it all over again." "There are no ifs," I cut him off. "Please leave now. I need to prepare for my meeting with Su Yuan tomorrow." After the door closed, I immediately collapsed onto the sofa. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and a buzzing filled my ears. The doctor had warned me that thallium poisoning would affect the nervous system, and my symptoms were rapidly worsening. My phone vibrated. A message from the private investigator. "Found it. There's a blue ledger in a hidden compartment in the Su family study. It records a transaction from 20 years ago." This was followed by a blurry photo. On the yellowed page of the ledger, The words, disposal of the win girl, 500,000 were starkly visible. The signature was a flamboyant scrawl. Yet I recognized the handwriting instantly. My blood ran cold. The person who coincidentally rescued me after I went missing at age 7 and sent me to the orphanage, the person who just happened to visit every year on my birthday, the person who always told Pei Jinchuan that I was of dubious origin and scheming, Mrs. Pei. My hands trembled as I dialed my father's number. Dad, I whispered, I think I might have found the person who abducted me all those years ago. Outside the window, lightning suddenly split the sky, thunder boomed, and a torrential downpour began. It was just like that night 20 years ago, the same kind of weather when I was led away from the amusement park. 14. Pei Jinchuan's perspective. Rainwater trickled down the collar of my cheap raincoat. I hunched my shoulders and shoved the last flyer into the hands of a man in a suit rushing by. He tossed it into a trash bin without a glance, splashing muddy water onto my pant leg. Brother Pei shifts over. My fast food joint co-worker, Xiao Li, waved from across the street. Did you hand out all 300 flyers today? I nodded and rubbed my aching wrist. These hands, once signing billion-dollar contracts, now hand out 300 fried chicken discount coupons every day. After the Pei family's bankruptcy, with my father in prison and all assets seized, this 50 yuan raincoat is my most valuable possession. My phone vibrated, a rent reminder from the landlord. I counted the loose change in my pocket, still 200 short. The pawn shop on the corner was still lit. I touched my wristwatch, the last thing I had left to sell, a Rolex Oyster Perpetual. The old man behind the counter said, pushing his glasses up, it's a fake, impossible. My voice was hoarse. This is a limited edition, a decent fake, but the movement's wrong. He tossed the watch back. 50 bucks, take it or leave it. I snatched the watch and turned to leave. When Yan gave me this watch for my birthday last year, there's no way she would. My steps suddenly faltered. My mind flashed back to that morning, when Yan pushed the watch box toward me, her eyes sparkling. Happy birthday, Jinchuan. What did I say back then? Something like, just leave it there, I'm going to be late for a meeting. The rain grew heavier and heavier. I stood under the pawnshop's awning and suddenly noticed a tiny scratch on the crystal. This wasn't my watch. I remembered I'd sold mine last month to pay the rent. This was a replica Wen Yen had left in my mailbox at some point. On the back of the case, a line of small text was engraved, Gut Besserung, get well soon. This was German. I murmured to myself. That year, when I was down with a bad cold, when Yen came by every day to bring me congee. Once, I overheard her practicing this German phrase into her phone. When I asked why she was learning it, she blushed and said, picked it up from a show. Back in my rented room, I collapsed onto the bed with its creaky springs and dragged a cardboard box out from underneath. It was filled with little things Wen Yen had given me. A fountain pen, a tie clip, cufflinks. Each one came with a note, her handwriting as neat as printed text. This pen has a great grip for all your meetings. Jinchuan, damn, which drinking session did I lose it at? I heard you're meeting with Japanese clients. These cufflinks are cherry blossom shaped. Suyuan later accidentally dropped them in a cup of coffee. The latest noise-canceling headphones, since you have trouble sleeping. Ended up giving them to old Zhang, the driver. I grabbed the faded talisman at the very bottom. The one she had prayed for on her knees every 3 steps from the foot of the mountain when she was 18. I used to laugh at her for being superstitious, but now it's my only good luck charm. My phone rang with an unknown number. Mr. Pei, a woman's voice said, this is Renha Hospital. Your physical examination report indicates severe malnutrition. We recommend. I hung up. Ever since I passed out in the fast food kitchen last week, I've been getting bombarded by all sorts of charities. The strange thing is, they all seem to know I'm allergic to penicillin. The next morning during my shift, I was wiping down tables when the manager rushed over. Xiao Pei, we're short-staffed in the VIP room. You go. The moment I pushed open the private room's door, my blood ran cold. Wen Yen, dressed in a pale lavender suit, sat by the window, engaged in lively conversation with the polished gentleman across from her. Her hair was swept up, revealing the elegant curve of her neck, while sapphire earrings sparkled brilliantly in the sunlight. They were the most expensive jewels I had ever seen, yet they paled in comparison to the light in her eyes. This truffle foie gras, she said to the waiter with a smile, please replace it with a vegetarian dish. Director Lee is allergic to animal protein. The elite man raised his eyebrows in surprise. How did you know? President Wen, at the forum's tea break last time, she took a sip of red wine. You specifically asked for the vegan pastries. I froze in the doorway, the lemon water on my tray trembling slightly. This kind of attentiveness was all too familiar to me. Once, she had known every single one of my likes and dislikes, my every preference and taboo. as if they were a treasured list. Waiter, the well-dressed man frowned. Pour the water. I lowered my head and stepped forward, deliberately letting my bangs cover my face, but when Wen Yan's perfume wafted over, my fingers trembled despite myself. It was her favorite sandalwood scent. Something she only used to wear on important occasions. Thank you. Her eyes swept over my ID badge, her gaze utterly flat, as if looking at a stranger. Just as I was about to leave the private room, the door was flung open. Su Yuan stormed in on 10-centimeter heels, her Chanel suit unable to conceal her haggard complexion. Wen Yan, she shrieked. Did you think bribing the police would? The words caught in my throat as she saw me. Well, if it isn't young Master Pei. Su Yuan's red lips twisted into a malicious smile. What's this? Changed careers to become a waiter. She deliberately knocked over the water glass on my tray, drenching me in ice-cold water. A dead silence fell over the private room. I clenched the soaked hem of my clothes, hearing Wen Yan gently set down her napkin. Miss Su, her voice was like tempered ice. Your father violated his bail conditions by leaving the country. You are now the sole remaining suspect in custody. She slid a document across the table. Read this before you decide whether to make a scene. Su Yuan opened the file, her face instantly turning ashen. How did you get this? The choice is simple, Wen Yan said with a smile. Either leave quietly, or spend tonight in the interrogation room looking at this evidence. Su Yuan staggered backward, bumping into me. I instinctively caught her, catching the faint scent of marijuana lingering on her collar. It seems she hasn't been keeping her nose clean, even while out on bail. Get lost. She shook off my hand, then leaned in to whisper in my ear. Does she know it was your father who planned her kidnapping? I was thunderstruck. Su Yuan seized the moment to slip a hard object into my pocket before clicking away in her high heels. Wen Yan picked up the menu again. My apologies, Mr. Li, for the unseemly spectacle. The well-dressed man looked at me curiously. And this is, we're not close, Wen Yan said flatly. Just someone from my past. Her words were colder than ice water. I mechanically left the private room. In a bathroom stall, I pulled out the item Su Yuan had slipped me, a tiny USB drive. After work, I sprinted back to my rented room and plugged the USB drive into my second-hand computer. Inside, there was only one audio file, dated 20 years ago. Is the child taken care of? My father's voice asked. Don't worry, we dumped it at an orphanage in another province. A woman's voice replied. It was Madame Pei. About old Wen. He'll never find it. Madame Pei sneered. Once we secure the dockyard project, we'll arrange an accident. I slumped in the chair, my stomach churning. All the suffering Wen Yan endured in the Pei household over the years stemmed from this very conspiracy, and I, the son of the murderer, what right do I have to beg for her forgiveness? The rain outside the window had stopped. Moonlight fell on the calendar hanging on the wall. Tomorrow was Wen Yan's birthday. It was also the day she was abducted. I pulled out my last 100-yuan bill and rushed to the flower shop on the corner. 25 white roses, matching the age she was when she first came to the Pei family. The florist deftly wrapped the bouquet. Buying flowers for your girlfriend again? I shook my head with a wry smile as I stepped outside. A black Maybach pulled up slowly across the street. The car window rolled down, revealing Xiaolin's face. Mr. Pei, she said, holding out an envelope. President Wen asked me to pass this to you. Inside was a plane ticket to Yunnan and an old-fashioned key, the study in the Wen family's old house. Xiaolin sighed, she said, to return it to its rightful owner. I gripped the keys tightly, and a sudden realization dawned on me. Has she taken a turn for the worse? Xiaolin's eyes instantly welled up with tears. The doctor said she wouldn't make it through. An ambulance screamed past, its piercing siren drowning out the rest of his sentence. 15. The lock on the Wen family's old house gave a rusty, reluctant click. I pushed the door open, and a wave of musty air, thick with memories, washed over me. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the tattered curtains, illuminating the grand piano in the living room, shrouded in a white dust cover. Wen Yan once taught me to play Mariage d'Amour right here. While I was busy replying to work emails, a small note was stuck to the back of the key. The study is on the second floor. Turn right. Do not enter the other rooms. As if guided by some unseen force, I turned left and pushed open the door at the end of the corridor. Dust danced in the moonlight, and the sight of the wall densely covered with papers made my breath catch. They were all portraits of me, pencil sketches, watercolors, oil paintings, me at different ages, from different angles, my profile while working at the desk, the strands of hair flying as I played tennis, even the slight furrow of my brow in sleep. The earliest ones have yellowed, their corners carefully mended with tape. Several cardboard boxes are piled in the corner, the top one labeled J.C., age 18. My hands trembled as I opened it, and inside were all sorts of little trinkets, a pen I had used, a coffee mug, even a crumpled up sticky note. Each item had a label. Jean Chuan said, "This pen writes smoothly." He drank 2 cups of this brand of coffee today. The lunch wasn't to his taste. Change the menu tomorrow. At the bottom of the box, pressed flat, was a diary dated 10 years ago. Jean Chuan praised the bird I drew today. I secretly kept the sketchbook he used. I know it's weird, but the paper he touched even smells like pine wood. I snapped the notebook shut. Over all these years, Wen Yan's feelings for me had started much earlier and ran far deeper than I ever imagined, and all I gave her in return was that line: "Even the thickest skin should know when to quit." The study on the 2nd floor was locked, but the key opened it without any resistance. In the center of the room, on a table, sat a safe. A sticky note was pasted beside the combination dial. "Try the date you first met me, July 23, 1999. The safe door clicked open. Inside lay only a single, yellowed page of medical records. Patient, Wen Yan, age 7, 2nd-degree burns on back and thighs, suspected to be the result of abuse. It felt like a sledgehammer had hit my chest. Wen Yan had never mentioned this part of the past. A memory flashed back. She always wore high-necked, long-sleeved tops. Even in the height of summer. My phone suddenly vibrated, and Xiao Lin's name popped up on the screen. "Mr. Pei," her voice trembled with tears. "President Wen has lost consciousness, and she keeps calling your name. The doctor said it might be toxins affecting her nervous system." His blood rushed to his temples. "Which hospital?" "Xiehe International." "But you mustn't." The phone was suddenly snatched away, and an authoritative male voice came through. "Pei Jean Chuan, if you have even a shred of decency left, stay away from my daughter forever." The call cut off when I rushed downstairs. The bouquet of white roses was still lying in the foyer. I grabbed it and sprinted toward the last subway train, my mind filled with images of Wen Yan curled up in the corner of the orphanage. If this was the memory she wanted to return to its rightful owner, then I had to tell her. I remember the light in her eyes the day we first met, the first wildflower she handed me, and all the tenderness I deliberately ignored. I remember 16, the VIP floor of Xiehe International Hospital was brightly lit. I hid in the fire escape, watching Wen's father on the phone at the far end of the corridor. Seizing the moment he turned away, I slipped into the hospital room. Wen Yan lay in the stark white sheets, like a faded paper doll. A tangle of tubes and wires snaked around her slender wrists, where I recognized the faint, familiar scars. When she was 18, she shielded me from a falling glass display case. "The doctor says you need rest," I whispered, placing the roses on the bedside table. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her pale lips silently formed 2 words: "Jean Chuan." I froze on the spot. For the first time in 10 years, she called me by my name without my surname. As the nurse's footsteps drew near, I hastily ducked into the bathroom. Through the crack in the door, I saw the doctor finish checking the 4-drip rate and leave. Once the hallway fell silent again, I tiptoed back to the bedside. Wen Yan was running a fever, her forehead burning hot. I wrung out a wet towel and placed it on her face. Suddenly, I remembered back in college when she had a high fever. The infirmary had no beds, so I carried her back to the dorm on my back. Back then, she was as light as a feather, murmuring in my ear, "Brother Jean Chuan, you smell like sunshine." Now, her body was even thinner, her collarbones jutting out sharply as if about to pierce through her skin. The 4 fluid dripped, each drop counting down the little time she had left. "You have to live," I said, gripping her hand so tightly the sapphire ring dug into my palm. "At least live long enough to hear me say, I'm sorry." Outside the window, the sky began to lighten. The nurse's shift change was approaching. I fished the small protective charm from my pocket and slipped it beneath her pillow, returning what's rightfully yours. I kissed her fingertips. "Now it's my turn to watch over you." As I was leaving, I ran into Wen's father in the hallway. His eyes swept coldly over the visitor's pass I'd stolen from the nurse's station. "The poison Wen Yan ingested," he said, his voice hoarse, "is connected to your mother." I was thunderstruck. "Impossible. My mother passed away 5 years ago. Before she died, she gave the Su family a formula." Mr. Wen handed over a test report. "Chronic thallium poisoning. The symptoms are identical to the accidental skin infection Yen Yan developed after being scalded at age 7. I couldn't understand the data on the report, but the conclusion was horrifying. Long-term, low-dose ingestion. Estimated time to onset of severe symptoms, 20 years. So, from the very first day when Yan entered the Pei family, the countdown to her death had already begun. Why only now? My throat tightened, because the dosage was suddenly increased. Mr. Wen's gaze was sharp as a blade. "On the very day you had her draw 800 cubic centimeters of blood, my legs went weak, and I had to brace myself against the wall. That day, my mother did come to the hospital, and kindly Brought Wen Yen a cup of hot milk. She is now. The antidote is still in the experimental phase. Wen's father turned to look at the hospital room. The success rate is less than 30%. The morning light filtered through the blinds, carving jagged scars across the floor. I suddenly understood why Wen Yen had taken me to see the old house. It held all the truth, including the evidence of my mother's involvement in her murder. And yet, knowing all of this, she still had Shaolin deliver the plane ticket to me. Can I see her? My voice trembled. Mr. Wen fell silent for a long moment before finally stepping aside. 5 minutes. 17. When Yen woke up 3 days later, I was hiding in the bushes of the hospital's back garden, watching through a third-floor window as they raised her bed and she took small sips of something. She was so thin she was almost translucent. Sunlight could pass right through her wrist. My phone vibrated. A message from Shaolin. Boss Wen is asking who came to visit. I replied, let's just say it was a caregiver. Putting down my phone, I fished out the USB drive from my pocket, the one I had taken from the Wen family's old house that night. Besides the evidence of the kidnapping, there was also a blurry surveillance video. 15-year-old Wen Yen was in the Pei family's kitchen, secretly pouring something into my mother's teacup. The very next day, my mother was hospitalized with a sudden, mysterious illness. A sudden realization hit me, and I rushed to the hospital's records room. After some difficulty, I finally managed to retrieve my mother's medical records from that year. The described symptoms bore a striking resemblance to thallium poisoning, so Wen Yen had known all along who the poisoner was, and had even returned the favor in kind. This discovery filled me with both heartache and pride. The girl I love was never a helpless little rabbit, but a wolf cub who always settles her scores. It's just that her methods are too gentle, so gentle that even her revenge leaves room for mercy. Back in the rental apartment, I pulled out the resume buried under the bed. The MBA degree and my tenure as CEO of the Pei Group still felt scorching on the page. Over the past month, I've sent out 27 job applications, and every single one has vanished without a trace. Now I understand why Wen Yen is protecting me. With the Wen family's influence, they could have made it impossible for me to take a single step in the business world, but she didn't. In fact, she might have even quietly stopped those who would kick a man when he's down. I grabbed my jacket and rushed to the nearest internet cafe, spending the whole night revising my resume. At dawn, I changed my desired position from executive to sales representative and mass sent it to every job board. If this was the price I had to pay for a fresh start, I accepted it. A week later, while I was manning the counter at a home appliance store, the news of Wen Yen's discharge from the hospital was playing on the TV. She stood poised before the camera in a pale blue suit, stating calmly, the Wen Group will establish a special fund to assist victims of occupational injuries. The camera panned across her slender wrist, where an unfamiliar sandalwood bracelet now rested, not the protective charm I had slipped to her. A sharp pain pierced my heart. Perhaps it's for the best. That cheap trinket was no longer worthy of the woman she had become. Looking for a new TV, sir? I repeated the sales pitch mechanically. This 4K model features crystal clear. The customer waved a hand dismissively and walked away. I looked down, tidying the display model, when a familiar sound of footsteps suddenly reached my ears, that distinct rhythm of high heels clicking against the floor, a sound I could recognize with my eyes closed. After 7 years, when Yen stood before the Samsung display area, surrounded by 5 or 6 assistants, her complexion looked better, and her pearl earrings swayed gently as she turned her head. When our eyes met across the room, she visibly faltered for a moment. Mr. Wen, do you know our staff? The manager asked obsequiously. She gave a slight shake of her head, but her gaze fell on the name tag on my chest. New here. He just joined last month. The manager chimed in eagerly. Mr. Pei is excellent. He was last week's top salesperson. The corner of Wen Yen's lips lifted almost imperceptibly. It was that familiar, trying not to laugh expression I knew so well. She turned to the latest model TV. This one, I'll take 50 units, F50 units, the manager stammered. Where shall we deliver them to? Staff dormitory. She handed over a business card. Contact my assistant. Before leaving, she knocked over some brochures from the display stand. I crouched down to pick them up and noticed something tucked into the top one. My old protective charm, now encased in an exquisite glass pendant. Flipping it over, a line of small text came into view. Interested in the Yunnan project? I looked up, catching only her receding figure, so upright, so beautiful. 18. The rainy season in Yunnan arrives with sudden, ferocious intensity. I was crouched in the temporary site shed, checking today's building materials list. Rainwater leaked through the gaps in the plastic sheeting, spreading a damp stain across the ledger. Foreman Pei, the intern, Xiao Zhang, rushed in wearing his hard hat. 3 truckloads of rebar are stuck halfway here because of a mudslide. I grabbed my raincoat and ran outside. Over the past 3 months, I went from selling home appliances to becoming the project manager at this construction company, all thanks to Wen Yan's simple question, interested, but she never showed up again. Only Xiaolin would occasionally email me with project updates outside the construction site. The supervisor sent by the Wen group was berating the workers upon seeing me. His demeanor instantly turned respectful. Manager Pei. In a situation like this, we should evacuate the workers first. I cut him off, then contact the nearest backup supplier, but the costs will overrun. Safety comes first. I wiped the rain from my face. Director Wen said this project isn't on a tight schedule. The supervisor's eyes darted around. How do you know Director Wen's exact words? Because I know her better than I know myself. The words caught in my throat, and what came out was just a guess. By the time the crisis was handled, it was already late at night. Back in the container dormitory, a text from an unknown number lit up the phone. Reinforcement bars dispatched from Jiaodong as backup, arriving 7 a.m. tomorrow. Xiaolin. I called back, but the number was disconnected. A flash of lightning outside the window illuminated the tattered project proposal on the desk. In the corner of the title page was a tiny blue butterfly mark, identical to the brooch Wen Yan had as a child. This was her project. She had never truly let it go. The materials arrived on time the next day, accompanied by an extra black sedan. The vice president of Wen Group stepped out of the car and immediately shook my hand. Manager Pei, you kept your cool under pressure. President Wen specifically sent me to express his gratitude. My heart skipped a beat. Is her health improving? Much better. The vice president lowered his voice. Actually, there's a new project we'd like to invite you to. The contract lay open on the desk. A proposal for a logistics center in the neighboring province. The salary was 3 times my current one, plus stock options. At the bottom, in the space for the legal representative's signature, Wen Yan's handwriting was elegant and firm. Why me? My voice tightened. The vice president chuckled. Ms. Wen said you're the only person she's ever met who can remember the batch number for every piece of construction material. My mind flashed back to that rainy night, when Wen Yan crouched in the pay warehouse, helping me verify the inventory until 3 in the morning. Back then, I'd only casually praised her good memory, not knowing how much effort she had put in to achieve it. After signing the contract, I found myself inexplicably opening the photo album on the day the Yunnan project broke ground. I secretly took a photo of the Wen's Group logo on the foundation stone. In the corner of the photo, there was a blurry figure holding a blue umbrella. After zooming in tenfold, I recognized that silhouette. She had been there, but she didn't want to see me. The phone buzzed suddenly. It was Su Yuan's lawyer. Mr. Pei, Miss Su is willing to testify against Mrs. Pei, but on one condition. Go on. She wants to see you in person. In the visitation room, Su Yuan wore an orange prison jumpsuit, her manicure chipped and peeling. Her once delicate face was now puffy and pale, only her eyes still gleaming with that familiar, viper-like light. Brother Jinchuan, she said, her voice sickly sweet. I knew you'd come. I pulled out the voice recorder directly. Evidence of my mother's involvement in Wen Yan's kidnapping. What's the rush? She licked her chapped lips. I have a secret about you and Wen Yan. If this is about that tired old bloodline trope, I sneered. I've already done a paternity test. Su Yuan suddenly burst into laughter, the sound echoing in the visitation room. You think that's the end of it? She leaned closer to the glass. Do you know why your mother was so determined to kill Wen Yan? I clenched my fists. Because Mrs. Wen, she said, enunciating each word, was your father's first love. Wen Yan should have been your sister. The world fell silent in an instant. The fragments in her memory suddenly clicked into place. The locked drawer in her father's study was filled with newspaper clippings about the Wen family. The sight of mother hysterically screaming, "You little bitch," at Wen Yan, and that night Wen Yan was scalded. When father, unusually, personally took her to the hospital. Where's the proof? Su Yuan pulled a photo from inside her bra. From your father's safe. In the photo, my father in his younger days stands by the sea with his arm around a woman in a white dress. Between them is a little girl whose eyes and brows are the spitting image of Wen Yan's. On the back, it reads, to Xiaoyun, with all my love forever. Summer 1992, a sharp pain twisted in my gut. So, could Wen Yan be my half-sister? Just kidding. Su Yuan suddenly slapped the glass. This woman is Wen Yan's mother's best friend. I photoshopped the text. She burst into laughter again. But your expression just now, priceless. I stood up and walked away. Her shrill scream followed me from behind. You think Wen Yan really loves you? She just wants revenge on the Pei family. The projects she's throwing your way now, they're all. The prison guard restrained her. I took a deep breath in the sunlight when my phone suddenly vibrated. It was Wen Yan's private number. the first message in 3 years, tonight at 7. Kunming Intercontinental, room 2808, bring your paternity test. Report, 19. The door to the presidential suite was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently. When Yen stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, her silhouette slender yet poised, the nightscape of Kunming unfurled beneath her feet, like an inverted river of stars. I didn't file a report, I said, closing the door behind me, because there was no need to investigate. She turned around, her face, thinned by illness, revealed sharper contours, and the sapphire earring sparkled under the light that was the gift I gave her for her 20th birthday. I hadn't expected her to still have it. Have a seat. She gestured toward the sofa, though she remained standing herself. You did excellent work on the Yunnan project. A business compliment. My chest felt tight. Why are you helping me? Just a business decision. She handed me a cup of tea. Try it. It's a newly arrived pour. A note was pressed under the cup. There's an antidote component in the tea. Don't say a word. I drank it all without changing my expression. Good tea. A faint smile touched her lips as she produced a tablet. Take a look at this. On the screen was the evidence list for Su Yuan's case, the final entry an audio file labeled Madame Pei's confession. I tapped the play button, and my mother's icy voice began to speak. It was I who instructed the Su family to deal with that girl. Old Pei has always carried a torch for Madame Wen, even planned to divorce me and marry her. When Yan turned off the audio. Do you understand now? Understand what? I gave a bitter smile. That my mother killed someone out of jealousy, or that my father. No. She suddenly moved closer, the faint scent of sandalwood lingering around her. Understand why I had to leave the Pei family, because she had known these filthy secrets all along, but chose to remain silent to protect my mental well-being. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. The antidote. My voice trembled. You could have what? Exposed your mother. She shook her head. That would have destroyed you. So she chose to slowly poison herself instead, to be misunderstood, to leave covered in scars. I covered my eyes, tears seeping through my fingers. Don't cry. Her voice softened as she handed me a tissue. It's all over now. That simple comfort shattered me completely. Every defense I had built up over 3 years crumbled. I fell to my knees before her and wept like a child when Yin gently stroked my hair, just as she had done years ago when my mother passed away. Back then she said, Jinchuan, you still have me. And now she says, we're even. I looked up, and in her eyes was a peace I had never seen before. When Yin, I wiped my face roughly. If there's a chance, 3 ground rules. She cut me off, holding up 3 fingers. First, we maintain independence and don't interfere with each other's work. Second, regular health checkups. Third, after a brief pause, complete honesty. Always, my heart hammered in my chest. This is the probationary terms. She turned and fetched a contract. The Wen family's newly established charity fund needs a director. On the last page of the contract, next to the job description, a small line of text was printed. Must work closely with Chairman Wen and, when necessary, cohabitate. I signed my name too quickly, and the pen nib tore through the paper when Yen let out a soft laugh. A sound like a clear spring flowing over a parched riverbed. No rush, she said, pulling the contract away. Let's deal with the poison first. Fireworks suddenly bloomed outside the window, illuminating her smiling eyes, summoning my courage. I gently brushed my pinky against hers. This time, let me be the one to chase you. Okay. She didn't pull her hand away. 23 months later, at the launch reception for the Nianjin Charity Foundation, I greeted the guests in the suit Wen Yen had picked out for me. Xiaolin quietly told me that President Wen was waiting for me on the terrace. She was wearing the same lilac dress from our first meeting, only this time, the hem revealed smooth, healthy skin. The burn scars were finally healed by the latest technology. For you, she said, handing over a small box. Inside was a key, identical to the one from the old house all those years ago, returning it to its rightful owner. I raised an eyebrow. No, she whispered, rising on her toes to speak by my ear. It's an invitation. The night breeze stirred, and the glass pendant at her neck slipped free from her collar. The protective charm sealed inside had yellowed with age, yet the inscription remained clear. For Brother Jinchuan, peace and joy. Gently, reverently, I kissed her lips. The end.